Wait, you're telling me the homeless-looking guy I let sit at my table is a millionaire? That's exactly what happened to Aria Collins on what should have been the worst Monday of her life. She was about to lose everything, her last shot at a job, her dignity, maybe even the roof over her head. But when she offered her table to a tired stranger in a cafe full of people who looked right through him, she had no idea she was letting in a tech mogul worth 47 million, testing whether kindness still existed in this brutal city. Stay until the end to see how one moment of decency changed two lives forever. And comment your city below so I can see how far this story travels. The Monday morning rain came down like the city was trying to wash itself clean and failing miserably. Aria Collins stood outside the Brew and Bean Café on 7th Street, staring through the fogged-up windows at a sea of occupied tables, and felt the familiar weight of defeat settling into her bones. 27 years old. A graphic design degree that might as well have been printed on toilet paper for all the good it was doing her. $342 in her checking account, a laptop held together with duct tape and prayers. And in exactly 14 minutes, a video interview that represented her last best chance at crawling out of the hole her life had become. She pushed through the door, and the cafe noise hit her like a wall. The hiss of espresso machines, the clatter of ceramic mugs, the overlapping conversations of people who had somewhere to be and the means to get there. The air smelled like burnt coffee and expensive perfume, that particular urban mixture of hustle and desperation. Every single table was taken. Aria's eyes swept the room with practiced efficiency, the kind you develop after months of cafe hopping because you can't afford your own internet. The window seats were occupied by remote workers with dual monitors and noise-canceling headphones, their body language screaming, "Don't even think about it." The communal table in the center was claimed by a group of impossibly young startup guys in Patagonia vests, their MacBooks plastered with company stickers she didn't recognize. The corner booths hosted business meetings, laptops and leather portfolios spread out like territorial markers. And everyone, every single person, had positioned their bags, their jackets, their belongings on the empty chairs beside them like moats around their personal kingdoms. Aria felt the panic starting to rise, that hot tightness in her chest that made it hard to breathe. She pulled out her phone. 11 minutes now. She needed to set up, test her camera, make sure the angle didn't show the water stain on the wall behind her. She needed to look professional, competent, like someone worth hiring. She needed a goddamn table. "Excuse me," she said to a woman near the door, gesturing to the empty chair across from her. "Would you mind if I'm waiting for someone," the woman said without looking up from her phone. Her tone made it clear the conversation was over before it started. Aria moved deeper into the cafe. A man in a tailored suit had 3 chairs around him covered with his coat, his gym bag, and what appeared to be his lunch. She didn't even bother asking. "Hi, sorry, is anyone taken?" said a girl who couldn't have been more than 23, blonde highlights and designer sneakers, not even glancing up from her Instagram feed. Aria's laptop bag felt like it weighed 100 pounds. Her throat was tight. 9 minutes. She could feel the eyes of the baristas on her, the way service workers can always spot desperation. One of them, a guy with a beard and full-sleeve tattoos, gave her a sympathetic look that somehow made it worse. She was about to give up, about to walk back out into the rain and take the interview sitting on the curb like the failure she was rapidly becoming when she spotted it. A small 2-person table near the back. A woman sat there alone, maybe early 30s, absorbed in something on her phone. There was an empty chair across from her, not covered with a bag, not claimed with a jacket, just empty. Aria approached like she was defusing a bomb. "Excuse me," she said, her voice smaller than she wanted it to be. "I'm so sorry to bother you, but would it be okay if I sat here? I have an interview in a few minutes, and everywhere else is—" The woman looked up. She had the kind of face that made you immediately trust her, warm brown eyes and a quick smile. "Oh, honey, of course. Sit. I'm just killing time anyway." Aria nearly cried with relief. "Thank you so much. I promise I won't bother you. I just need to—" "You're fine. Seriously. Good luck with your interview." The woman gathered her own belongings to make more room. "Knock 'em dead." Aria sat up with shaking hands. 7 minutes. She positioned her laptop, opened it with the careful reverence of someone handling a religious artifact, and pressed the power button. Nothing happened. She pressed it again. Still nothing. The black screen stared back at her like a dead eye. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no, come on." She tried the power button 3 more times, each press more desperate than the last. Nothing. The battery was dead, and she was in the one cafe in the entire city that didn't have outlets anywhere near this table. "You okay?" the woman across from her asked. "My laptop won't, Arya's voice cracked. She was going to cry. Right here in this cafe full of strangers, she was about to completely fall apart. The woman's expression shifted from polite concern to genuine compassion. "Do you have a charger?" "Yeah, but there's no outlet here, and—" "Here!" The woman stood up, unplugged her own laptop from a nearby outlet, and handed Arya the plug. "Use mine. I've got plenty of battery." Arya stared at her. "I can't. You don't have to." "Yes, you can. Plug in. How long until your interview?" 6 minutes. "Then move. Plug it in." Arya scrambled to connect her charger, her hands still shaking. The laptop screen flickered to life with agonizing slowness. 3 minutes. She opened Zoom, checked her camera angle, and nearly sobbed when she realized the light was all wrong. She looked like a corpse. "Tilt it up," the woman said, leaning over to help adjust the laptop screen. "There. And put your water bottle behind it to prop it up. Trust me." The adjustment worked perfectly. Arya looked human again. Professional, even. "Thank you," she said, and meant it with every fiber of her being. "You have no idea how much—" "Go get that job," the woman said, giving her a thumbs up before returning to her seat. Arya took a deep breath, smoothed down her hair one last time, and clicked the link to join the meeting. While she waited for the host to admit her, she glanced at the cafe around her, at all those people who'd refused to share their space, who'd treated empty chairs like precious resources they couldn't possibly spare, and at this one stranger who'd helped without hesitation, who'd given up her power outlet and her time for someone she'd never see again. The interview window opened. A middle-aged man appeared on screen, already looking bored. "Ms. Collins?" "Yes, hi. Thank you so much for meeting with me. Let's make this quick. I've got another call in 20 minutes. Great. The interview was barely 90 seconds old, and Arya could already tell it was going to be one of those. The kind where they'd already decided before talking to you, where you were just checking a box on their diversity initiative list before they hired their CEO's nephew. But she'd learned to smile through worse. "Of course. I really appreciate your time." 23 minutes later, Arya closed her laptop with the careful control of someone trying not to scream. The interview had been a disaster. Every answer she'd given was met with interesting, delivered in a tone that meant the exact opposite. When she'd shown her portfolio, work she was genuinely proud of, designs that had won local awards, the man had literally yawned. "We'll be in touch," he'd said, which was corporate speak for "don't hold your breath." She sat there for a moment, just breathing, trying to hold it together. The woman across from her had left at some point during the interview. Arya hadn't even noticed. In her place sat someone else now. A man. Maybe late 30s, though it was hard to tell. He looked tired in a way that went deeper than just lack of sleep. Worn gray jacket that had seen better days, jeans with a frayed hem, scuffed work boots that had mud-dried on the sides. His hair was dark and messy, like he'd barely bothered to comb it. He had the kind of face that could have been handsome if he smiled, but right now he just looked hollow. He was staring at his phone with an expression Arya recognized intimately. The look of someone checking their bank account and not liking what they saw. The look of someone calculating whether they could afford another coffee or if they should make the one in front of them last all morning. He glanced up and caught her watching. Arya quickly looked away, embarrassed. "Sorry," she muttered. "I didn't mean to." "You're fine," he said. His voice was quiet, a little rough. "Tough interview?" Arya let out a bitter laugh. "Is it that obvious?" "I've been there." He took a sip of his coffee. "For what it's worth, anyone who can hold it together in a cafe this loud probably has skills most people don't." It was such a simple thing to say, but something about it, the kindness in it, the unexpected grace, made Arya's eyes sting with tears she absolutely refused to let fall. "Thanks," she managed. "I needed to hear that." They sat in silence for a moment. Arya started packing up her things, moving slowly because she had nowhere to go and nothing to do but return to her cramped studio apartment and refresh her email every 5 minutes, hoping for a response that would never come. "Did you get the job?" the man asked. "No," Arya said. "I mean, technically they haven't told me yet, but no, I could tell. Their loss? You don't even know me. I know you said thank you to the woman who helped you earlier. I know you didn't get angry when your laptop died. I know you're sitting here doing the work instead of making excuses." He shrugged. "That's more than most people." Arya studied him more carefully now. There was something about him that didn't quite add up. The tired appearance, the worn clothes, but his hands were clean, his posture was good, and when he spoke, there was an intelligence in his eyes that suggested he'd seen more of the world than his appearance implied. "I'm Arya," she said, surprising herself. "Jonah." "Nice to meet you, Jonah. Thanks for the pep talk." "Anytime." He checked his phone again, frowned, and set it face down on the table. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "If you had $10 million, like, hypothetically, you woke up tomorrow and it was just in your account, what would you do with it?" Arya blinked. It was such a random question, so out of nowhere that she almost laughed. "That's specific. Humor me." She thought about it, really thought about it, instead of giving him the flippant answer she might have given anyone else. Because there was something in the way he asked that made her think the answer mattered to him. "I'd pay off my mom's medical bills," she said finally. "She had a stroke 2 years ago. She's okay now, mostly, but the debt is crushing her. She works 2 jobs and can barely make the minimum payments, so I'd take care of that first. And then? Then I'd probably do something stupid like try to start a program. Free design classes for kids who can't afford them. I grew up in a neighborhood where the schools didn't have art programs, where the only computers were in the library and you got 30 minutes a day if you were lucky. I learned design from YouTube videos and free trials of software I couldn't afford to buy. If I had that kind of money, I'd want to make sure other kids didn't have to." She stopped, suddenly self-conscious. "Sorry, that probably sounds naive." Jonah was looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "No," he said quietly. "It doesn't sound naive at all." Before Arya could respond, a commotion near the front of the cafe drew her attention. A group of young guys, early 20s, wearing the tech bro uniform of hoodies and expensive sneakers, had just walked in and claimed the communal table. They were loud, entitled, dropping brand names like they were confetti. "So I told the recruiter, if it's not at least $150K, don't even bother sending me the offer," one of them said, loudly enough that half the cafe could hear. "Bro, that's minimum," another one agreed. "You're worth at least $200K with your skills." Arya felt her jaw tighten. These guys, probably fresh out of Stanford or MIT, were talking about salaries she couldn't even imagine. Meanwhile, she'd just bombed an interview for a position that probably paid $45,000 if she was lucky. One of them pulled out a laptop, brand new, top of the line, the kind that cost more than Arya's monthly rent. "Check out this design I did," he said, turning the screen to show his friends. "It's for a meditation app. Pretty sick, right?" Arya could see it from where she sat. It was fine, competent, the kind of clean minimalist design that every tech company was doing these days. Nothing special, nothing that showed real vision or creativity, but his friends were acting like he'd just painted the Sistine Chapel. "Dude, that's amazing. You're going to be a creative director by the time you're 25, I swear." Arya looked down at her laptop, at the portfolio she'd showed in her interview, the designs she'd poured her heart into while working 3 part-time jobs to keep the lights on. Designs that had been dismissed with a yawn by a hiring manager who probably couldn't tell good work from bad if his life depended on it. "You okay?" Jonah asked quietly. She realized her hands were clenched into fists on the table. "Yeah, fine, it's frustrating sometimes. Watching people who've had every advantage act like they earned it all themselves." "Tell me about it." There was something in his voice, a bitterness that matched her own. The tech bros got louder. One of them was now scrolling through Instagram, pointing out terrible designs and laughing. "Look at this," he said, showing his phone to his friends. "Some wannabe designer trying to get clients on Instagram. Her rates are like $50 for a logo. Who even works for that little?" His friends laughed. That's embarrassing. Arya felt her face flush with shame and anger. She'd been that person. Hell, she still was that person. Last month, she'd designed a logo for a local bakery for $75 because she needed the money and they needed the work, and it was better than nothing. People who need to eat, she said, not quite under her breath. The tech bro's head turned in her direction. Sorry? Arya's heart started racing, but she met his gaze. I said, people who need to eat work for that little. People who don't have trust funds, or parents paying their rent or job offers waiting for them when they graduate. The guy's face flushed red. His friends looked uncomfortable. For a second, Arya thought he might actually say something back, might actually engage with what she'd said. Instead, he turned back to his friends and said, loudly enough that she could definitely hear, Jesus, bitter much? They all laughed. Arya wanted to sink through the floor. Hey, Jonah said. His voice was still quiet, but there was steel in it now. They're not worth it. Easy for you to say. Is it? He looked at her with those tired eyes. You think I haven't been where you are? You think I don't know what it's like to watch people with half your talent get twice your opportunities? I don't know what you know, Arya said, more sharply than she intended. I don't know you at all. Fair enough. Jonah stood up, picking up his coffee cup. For what it's worth, though, those guys will be managing startups into the ground in 5 years. But someone with your perspective, your empathy, your actual understanding of what it means to struggle, that's the person who ends up making things that matter. He started to walk away, then paused. And Arya? That program you talked about? The free design classes for kids? If you ever actually try to make that happen, let me know. I'd like to help. He walked toward the exit before she could respond, disappearing into the mid-morning crowd. Arya sat there, staring after him, trying to figure out what had just happened. A man who looked like he was barely scraping by had just offered to help her fund an imaginary nonprofit. Either he was delusional or what? She shook her head, dismissing it. It didn't matter. She'd probably never see him again anyway. That was how the city worked, brief moments of connection that dissolved as quickly as they formed, ships passing in the night. She finished packing her laptop, unplugged her charger, and glanced back at the table where she'd sat. The woman who'd helped her was long gone. Jonah was gone. Soon she'd be gone too. And this would just be another Monday morning in a long string of Monday mornings. Another rejection in a portfolio of failures. Arya was almost to the door when she heard one of the tech bros say something that made her stop. Yo, wasn't that Jonah Reed? Wait, the Jonah Reed? No way. I'm telling you, I saw his picture in TechCrunch last month. That was definitely him. Arya's blood ran cold. She turned slowly, watching as one of the guys pulled up an article on his laptop. Holy shit, it is him. It says here he's worth like $47 million. He founded Reed Labs, that massive design platform. Dude's a legend. What the hell is he doing in a random cafe dressed like that? Testing new features, maybe? Going undercover? Rich people are weird, man. Arya stood frozen in the doorway, her mind racing. Jonah Reed. That Jonah Reed. The founder of Reed Labs, the platform she'd been using for years. The company she'd dreamed of working for since college. The tired man in the worn jacket who'd asked her about $10 million and listened to her talk about helping kids. The man she'd just dismissed as probably delusional. She pulled out her phone with shaking hands and typed Jonah Reed Labs into Google. The first image that came up was him, same face, same dark hair, but in a sharp suit, standing in front of a company logo looking like exactly what he was. A millionaire tech founder who'd revolutionized the design industry. The article was dated 3 weeks ago. The headline read, Single Dad and Tech Titan, How Jonah Reed Balances Raising His Son Alone While Running a Multi-million-dollar Company. Arya read it twice, then 3 times, her heart pounding. 3 years ago, his wife had died in a car accident, leaving him a widower with a 4-year-old son. He'd taken a year off from his company to be there for his kid, then came back and somehow managed to double the company's value while being a full-time father. He was famous in tech circles for being notoriously private, for refusing to do press unless absolutely necessary, for choosing his son over networking events, and for apparently disguising himself as an ordinary person and hanging out in cafes. The article quoted him, I got tired of people treating me like a wallet with legs. I wanted to remember what it felt like to just be a person, to see if kindness still existed when there was no benefit to being kind. Arya felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. She'd offered her table to him, not because she knew who he was, not because she wanted anything from him, but because he'd looked tired and the cafe was crowded and it was the decent thing to do. And he'd noticed. He'd asked her that question about the $10 million because he was testing her, seeing what she'd say, seeing if she was like everyone else he met, people who saw dollar signs instead of humans. And she'd told him the truth about her mom, about wanting to help kids who came from nothing like she had. She'd passed some kind of test she hadn't known she was taking. Arya stood in that doorway for a long time, until the barista came over and asked if she was okay, until the morning rush started to die down and the cafe began to empty out. She had no idea what to do with this information. Jonah Reed, the Jonah Reed, had offered to help her with a program that didn't exist, had said he wanted to be involved. Had he meant it? Or was it just something rich people said, words without weight? She pulled up the Reed Labs website on her phone, found the contact page, stared at the email address for their community outreach department. Her finger hovered over it. What would she even say? "Hi, I met your CEO in a cafe this morning, and he said I should contact him about my imaginary nonprofit?" They'd laugh her out of the inbox. But then she remembered his eyes when he'd said it, the way he'd looked at her when she'd talked about helping kids. There had been something real there, something that transcended the test or the disguise or whatever game he'd been playing. He'd seen her, really seen her, not as a desperate job seeker or a struggling designer or a charity case, just as someone trying to do good in a world that made it increasingly hard to do good. Arya put her phone away. She didn't send the email, not yet. She needed to think, to process, to figure out what it meant that for just a few minutes this morning, she'd sat across from one of the most successful men in the tech industry and treated him like an equal, like a person. She walked out of the cafe into a day that had stopped raining. The sun was trying to break through the clouds, weak and watery, but there. The sidewalk was wet and smelled like concrete and new beginnings. Arya had no job, no prospects, no real plan for what came next. But she had a story now, a moment that felt like it meant something, even if she wasn't sure what yet. She'd been kind to a stranger and somehow, impossibly, the universe had noticed. As she walked away, she didn't see Jonah Reed standing in the doorway of the building across the street, watching her go. Didn't see the small smile on his face or the way he pulled out his phone and typed a quick message to his assistant. "Found someone interesting today. Let's see if she follows through." He'd given her a thread. The question was whether she'd be brave enough to pull it. 3 days passed before Arya could bring herself to open her laptop again. She'd spent those 72 hours in a fog of uncertainty, replaying the cafe encounter in her mind until the details blurred together like watercolors in rain. Had it really happened? Had she really sat across from Jonah Reed, shared her dreams with him, been so casually honest about what she'd do with money she'd never have? The whole thing felt increasingly surreal the more distance she got from it. Her studio apartment seemed smaller than usual, the walls pressing in with their peeling paint and water stains that the landlord refused to fix. Arya sat on her second-hand couch, the springs groaning under her weight, and stared at her closed laptop like it might bite her. Finally, on Thursday afternoon, she opened it. 63 new emails. 62 were spam, promotional garbage, and automated rejections from jobs she'd applied 2 weeks ago. The 63rd was from her mother. "Hi, sweetheart," it read. "Just checking in. How did the interview go on Monday? I've been praying for you. Love you so much. Don't forget to eat real food, not just ramen. Mom." Arya closed her eyes against the guilt that washed over her. She hadn't told her mom about the failed interview, hadn't told her that the job search was going nowhere, that the savings account was dwindling, that some nights Arya lay awake doing math in her head and coming up short every single time. Her mom had enough to worry about. The medical bills were crushing her, exactly like Arya had told Jonah. Catherine Collins worked as a home health aide during the day and cleaned office buildings at night, and every penny she made went toward debt she'd never asked for, debt that had arrived wrapped in a stroke she hadn't seen coming. Arya typed out a response. "Interview went okay. Still waiting to hear back. I'm eating fine. I promise. Love you." All lies, except for the last part. She was about to close the laptop when curiosity got the better of her. She pulled up Read Labs again, navigated past the slick corporate homepage to the About Us section. There was Jonah's photo, professional and polished, so different from the tired man in the gray jacket that it almost seemed like a different person entirely. But it wasn't. Same eyes, same jawline, same mouth that had offered her kindness when she'd needed it most. She read his bio. MIT graduate, founded Read Labs at 26, grew it from a small design platform into one of the biggest creative communities on the internet. Industry disruptor, visionary. All the words people use to describe success they could barely comprehend. And then, at the bottom, Jonah lives in the city with his son, Theo, and believes that great design should be accessible to everyone, not just those who can afford expensive software. Accessible to everyone. The words echoed what he'd said to her, about people with her perspective being the ones who made things that mattered. Had he meant it? Or was it just good PR? The kind of thing successful people said to make themselves seem more human. Arya clicked over to the careers page almost without meaning to. There were dozens of open positions: senior designer, product manager, engineering lead, all of them requiring years of experience she didn't have, expertise in systems she'd never touched, qualifications that might as well have been written in a foreign language. But then, at the bottom of the list, she saw something that made her breath catch. Creator Community Advocate, entry level. She clicked on it, her heart hammering. Read Labs is looking for someone who understands the struggles of independent creators, particularly those from underrepresented backgrounds. This role will focus on building programs, scholarships, and resources for designers who are just starting out. We want someone who's lived the experience, not just studied it. Someone who knows what it's like to create with limited resources and maximum determination. Arya read it 3 times, then 4. Then she scrolled down to the requirements. Required: passion for design and community building. Understanding of the challenges facing emerging creators. Excellent communication skills. Ability to empathize with people from diverse backgrounds. Preferred: portfolio demonstrating design work. Experience with social media and community engagement. Bachelor's degree or equivalent experience. Nothing about 5 years of corporate experience. Nothing about expertise in enterprise software. Just passion. Understanding. Empathy. Things she had in abundance, even if her bank account suggested otherwise. The posting was dated that morning, 3 days after her encounter with Jonah Reed. Coincidence? Or something else? Arya's hand moved to the Apply Now button, then stopped. What if this was a trap? What if she applied, and they laughed at her presumption, this nobody who'd had one conversation with their CEO and thought it meant something? What if Jonah didn't even remember her? But then she thought about what he'd said, about people with her perspective being the ones who ended up making things that matter, about wanting to help if she ever tried to make that program happen. This was that. This position was literally everything she'd described to him, everything she'd said she'd do if she had the resources. And he'd posted it 3 days after meeting her. Before she could talk herself out of it, Arya started typing. Not a corporate cover letter, not the kind of polished, impersonal application she'd been sending out for months. Something real. My name is Arya Collins, and I met Jonah Reed in a cafe on Monday. I don't know if he remembers me, but he asked me what I'd do with $10 million, and I told him I'd start a program for kids who can't afford design classes. Kids like me, who learned from YouTube videos and library computers and free trials that expired too quickly. I saw this posting, and I'm not sure if it's connected to that conversation, but even if it's not, I want you to know I am exactly the person you're looking for. Not because I have an impressive resume or connections or a degree from a fancy school, but because I know what it's like to be talented and broke, passionate and desperate, capable, and completely overlooked. I know what it feels like to design a logo for $75 because you need groceries. I know what it's like to watch people with half your skill get twice your opportunities because they knew the right people or had the right zip code. I know what it's like to pour everything you have into your work and still wonder if you'll make rent. And I absolutely know, that there are thousands of people out there just like me, sitting in cafes with dying laptops and duct-taped dreams, waiting for someone to see them. Not as charity cases, not as diversity statistics, but as people with real talent who just need a chance. If you hire me, I'll spend every day making sure those people get that chance. I promise you that. She attached her portfolio, took a deep breath, and hit send before she could second-guess herself into paralysis. The email disappeared into the void. Arya closed her laptop and sat in the silence of her apartment, listening to the traffic outside and the couple arguing upstairs and her own heart beating too fast. Either she'd just made the biggest mistake of her job search or the smartest move of her life. She had no idea which. The weekend crawled by with agonizing slowness. Arya took on a rush freelance job designing Instagram posts for a local yoga studio, $150 for 20 graphics, which worked out to $7.50 per post if she didn't count the hours of revisions the client would inevitably request. She couldn't afford to turn it down. She worked through Saturday night, her eyes burning, her back aching from hunching over her laptop. At 2 a.m., she took a break and scrolled through her phone, looking at the social media feeds of designers she admired. People living in nice apartments, working on meaningful projects, talking about their creative journeys like life was a scenic road trip instead of a demolition derby. One of them, a girl named Brielle, who Arya had known in college, had just posted about landing a job at a boutique agency. "Dreams really do come true if you work hard enough," the caption read, accompanied by a photo of Brielle holding a bouquet of flowers in what was clearly a designer office space. Arya remembered Brielle from school, remembered how she'd never had to work during college because her parents paid for everything, remembered how she'd done a summer internship in Paris. Unpaid, of course, but who cared when your family owned a vacation home in the Hamptons? Remembered how Brielle had once told Arya, with complete sincerity, that anyone could succeed if they just believed in themselves hard enough. As if belief paid rent. As if confidence covered medical bills. As if positive thinking could replace privilege. Arya closed Instagram and went back to work, finishing the yoga studio graphics as the sun came up Sunday morning. She sent them off, collapsed into bed fully clothed, and slept until 2 p.m. When she woke up, there was an email waiting. From Reed Labs. Arya stared at it for a full minute before she had the courage to open it. Her hands were shaking so badly she almost dropped her phone. "Dear Arya, thank you for your application to the Creator Community Advocate position. We were impressed by your cover letter and would like to invite you for an interview. Are you available Monday at 10 a.m.? Please let us know. Best regards, Sarah Chen, Director of People Operations, Reed Labs." Arya read it 5 times. Then she got up, walked to her tiny bathroom, and stared at herself in the mirror. Her reflection stared back, dark circles under her eyes, hair that desperately needed washing, wearing a 3-day-old t-shirt with a coffee stain on the collar. "They want to interview you," she told her reflection. "Reed Labs wants to interview you." Her reflection didn't look convinced. Monday morning arrived wrapped in anxiety so thick Arya could barely breathe through it. She'd spent Sunday afternoon preparing, researching Reed Labs until she could recite their company history, practicing answers to potential interview questions, picking out the one professional outfit she owned that didn't have any visible stains or tears. At 9:45 a.m., she sat at her kitchen table with her laptop open, her hands folded in her lap to keep them from shaking. The Zoom link was right there. All she had to do was click it. At 9:58, she clicked. The waiting room appeared. "Please wait for the host to let you in." Arya's heart was going to explode. This was it. This was everything. If she messed this up, if she blew this chance. The screen shifted. A woman appeared, maybe mid-40s, with kind eyes and a warm smile. "Arya? Hi, I'm Sarah Chen. Thanks so much for making time to meet with us today." "Thank you for the opportunity," Arya managed. Her voice sounded steadier than she felt. "So I'll be honest with you right up front," Sarah said. "Your application got flagged for immediate attention. Jonah, our CEO, he forwarded it to me personally with a note that said, 'Interview her today if possible.' That's not standard procedure. So I'm very curious about you." Arya's face flushed. "I met him briefly last week. I wasn't trying to use that connection or anything. Arya." Sarah's voice was gentle. "Relax. You're not in trouble. Jonah's not the kind of person who calls in favors for people unless he sees something real. The fact that he remembered you and thought to send your application my way, that tells me something. What does it tell you? That you made an impression, a genuine one. Sarah leaned forward slightly. So let's start simple. Tell me about yourself. Not the resume version, the real version. Arya took a breath. Then she told her story. Not the sanitized version she usually gave in interviews, but the truth. Growing up in a neighborhood where art classes were a luxury no one could afford, learning design from borrowed library books and pirated software she wasn't proud of using but couldn't afford not to. Working 3 jobs through college, sleeping 4 hours a night, graduating with honors and $30,000 in debt. She told Sarah about the endless job applications that went nowhere, the interviews where she could feel them judging her cheap laptop and bargain store clothes, the clients who tried to pay her in exposure, the ones who did pay but demanded endless revisions for poverty wages. The slow, grinding realization that talent wasn't enough, that in this industry, who you knew mattered more than what you could do. And then last Monday, Arya said, I had this interview that went terribly. I was sitting in a cafe afterward, feeling pretty hopeless, and this man sat down at my table. He looked tired. He looked like maybe life had kicked him around too, and he asked me what I'd do with $10 million. What did you tell him? The truth, that I'd pay my mom's medical bills and start a program for kids like me, kids who have the talent but not the access. Arya met Sarah's eyes through the screen. I didn't know who he was at the time. I found out later. But even if I'd known, my answer would have been the same. Sarah nodded slowly. Jonah mentioned that. He said you were the first person in years who didn't immediately start talking about real estate and luxury cars. I don't care about those things. What do you care about? Making sure the next kid like me doesn't have to fight as hard as I did. Making sure talent gets recognized regardless of where it comes from. Arya's voice strengthened. I care about building a community that actually supports its members instead of just using them for content. I care about creating resources that people can actually afford. I care about... She stopped, suddenly self-conscious. Sorry, I'm probably being too intense. No, Sarah said firmly. You're being honest. That's exactly what we need. She glanced at something off screen. Arya, I'm going to be straight with you. This position, it's brand new. We're creating it specifically because Jonah thinks Reed Labs has become too corporate, too disconnected from the actual creators we're supposed to serve. He wants someone who can build bridges, who can call us out when we're being elitist or exclusive, who can help us remember why we started this company in the first place. That sounds incredible. It also sounds incredibly difficult. You'd be challenging people more senior than you. You'd be advocating for unpopular positions. You'd be the voice in the room saying, wait, have we considered how this affects people who are struggling when everyone else is focused on profit margins and growth metrics? Sarah paused. Not everyone's going to like you for it. I'm used to people not liking me. Are you used to people actively working against you? Arya thought about Brielle, about the tech bros in the cafe, about every hiring manager who'd looked at her cheap clothes and assumed she wasn't worth their time. Yes, she said quietly. I'm used to that too. Sarah studied her for a long moment. Okay, I'm going to do something a little unusual here. Normally we'd have you do multiple interviews, meet the whole team, go through our standard process. But Jonah asked me to skip all that if I thought you were the right fit. He said time matters here, that every day we wait is another day. Someone like you is struggling because we're not doing our job. Arya's heart stopped. What are you saying? I'm saying the job is yours if you want it. $65,000 a year, full benefits, remote work with optional office days, and a budget to start building the programs you described. You'd report directly to me, but you'd work closely with Jonah on strategy and vision. Sarah smiled. So what do you say? Want to help us do better? Arya couldn't speak. Her throat had closed up entirely. $65,000. Benefits. The ability to actually build the things she'd only dreamed about. She managed. Yes, absolutely yes. Great. I'll send over the paperwork this afternoon. Can you start in 2 weeks? I can start tomorrow. Sarah laughed. 2 weeks is fine. Use the time to wrap up any current projects. Give yourself a breather. This job is going to be demanding. You should take the rest while you can get it. She paused. Welcome to Read Labs, Arya. I think you're going to do amazing things here. The call ended. Arya sat frozen at her kitchen table, staring at the blank screen, trying to process what had just happened. She had a job, a real job, at Read Labs, doing exactly the work she'd dreamed of doing. And then she burst into tears. They were good tears, relief and joy, and the sudden release of months of tension she hadn't fully realized she'd been carrying. She cried until her chest hurt, until her face was blotchy and her nose was running, until the fear and desperation of the past year finally had somewhere to go. When she could breathe again, she called her mother. "Hi, honey," Catherine answered on the second ring. "How are you?" "Mom," Arya said, her voice still thick. "I got a job. A good one. A really good one." There was a pause. Then, "Oh, sweetheart. Oh, Arya, that's wonderful. Tell me everything." So she did. Not about meeting Jonah, not yet, that was still too strange to explain. But about the position, the salary, the chance to build something meaningful, about how she could finally breathe, finally plan more than a week ahead, finally stop waking up in the middle of the night doing impossible math. "I'm so proud of you," Catherine said, and Arya could hear the tears in her voice. "You worked so hard for this. You deserve every bit of it." "I'm going to help you, Mom, with the bills. I know $65,000 isn't enough to pay them all off, but I can start making real payments. I can—" "Arya Nicole Collins, you listen to me." Her mother's voice turned fierce. "You are not using your money to pay my debts. You're going to save it. You're going to build yourself a life. You're going to finally stop just surviving and start living. Do you hear me?" "But Mom," "No, I mean it. I'm managing fine. I don't want you spending the best years of your life cleaning up my mess." "It's not your mess. You had a stroke. That's not—" "We'll talk about this later. Right now, I just want you to celebrate. You did this, honey, all by yourself. You should be proud." They talked for another hour, Arya's mother asking questions about the company, the position, what her days would look like. When they finally hung up, Arya felt lighter than she had in months, like gravity had temporarily lost its hold. She spent the rest of the day in a daze, responding to Sarah's email, filling out paperwork, staring at the employment contract that made it all official. She was going to be a creator community advocate at Read Labs. She was going to have business cards, an email signature, a title that meant something. That evening, she went back to the Brew and Bean Café. She didn't know why exactly, just that it felt important, like closing some kind of circle. The cafe was quieter than it had been on Monday. The dinner crowd not yet arrived. Arya ordered a coffee she could actually afford now and sat at a small table near the window, watching people pass by on the street outside. She was about to leave when she heard a familiar voice behind her. "Mind if I join you?" Arya turned. Jonah Reed stood there, but different than before. He still wore casual clothes, jeans and a dark sweater, but he carried himself differently now, less tired, more present, like he'd dropped whatever mask he'd been wearing the first time. "Sure," Arya said, her heart suddenly racing. "There's room for decent people." He smiled at that, a real smile that reached his eyes. "I heard you got the job. Congratulations." "You heard? Or you made it happen?" "Sarah makes her own decisions. I just flagged your application for attention." "Why?" Arya asked. The question came out more direct than she'd intended. "You barely know me. We talked for like 20 minutes. Jonah sat down across from her, his hands wrapped around his own coffee cup. "Can I tell you a story?" "Okay." 3 years ago, my wife died. Car accident. We'd been married for 8 years, together for 12. She was my best friend, my partner, the person who understood me better than I understood myself. His voice was steady, but Arya could hear the grief underneath it. When she died, I found out real fast who my real friends were. Most of them weren't. "I'm sorry." "Me too." He took a sip of coffee. "But what killed me wasn't the grief. I mean, that was awful, but I expected that. What I didn't expect was how people changed around me. Suddenly, I wasn't Jonah anymore. I was the widower, or the single dad, or worse, the rich guy who could fund their startup. Everyone wanted something. Everyone had an angle. Arya stayed quiet, letting him talk. So So I started doing this thing where I'd dress down, go to random cafes, just be nobody. See if anyone would still treat me like a person. Most people wouldn't. They'd see the worn jacket, the scuffed shoes, and suddenly I wasn't worth their time. He looked at her directly. But you did. You shared your table. You were kind. And when I asked you that question about the money, you gave me the most honest answer I've heard in years. I didn't know who you were. Exactly. That's why it mattered. Jonah leaned forward slightly. Arya, I meet dozens of people every week who tell me what I want to hear, who pitch me their ideas, their dreams, their visions for success. And 99% of them are full of shit. They're performing, trying to impress me. But you? You just told me the truth. And the truth was that you wanted to help people. That's not that special. You'd be surprised how special it is. He paused. I created that position for you. The day after we met, I called Sarah and told her I wanted to build a community advocacy role, someone who could help us stay connected to the creators we serve. She asked if I had anyone in mind. I said, not yet, but I'd know them when I saw them. And then I applied. And then you applied, with a cover letter that was so brutally honest I had to read it twice to make sure it was real. He smiled. You want to know what sealed it for me? That line about being talented and broke, passionate and desperate. Most people would never admit to the desperate part. They'd spin it as determination or hustle or some other bullshit. But you just said it. I'm desperate. I need this. I'm drowning, and I need help. I probably shouldn't have been that honest. That honesty is exactly what we need. Jonah's expression turned serious. Reed Labs has gotten too comfortable, too corporate. We've forgotten what it's like to be the struggling designer in the cafe with the dying laptop. I need someone who can remind us, someone who will make us uncomfortable when we need to be uncomfortable. Think you can do that? Arya met his eyes. I can do that. Good. Because I'm counting on you to call me out when I'm being an idiot, to tell me when we're being elitist or exclusive or when we're losing sight of why we built this company. He extended his hand across the table. Deal? She shook it. His grip was firm, warm. Deal. They sat there for a moment, hands clasped across the table, sealing an agreement that felt bigger than just a job. Then Jonah pulled back, glancing at his watch. I should go. I've got to pick up my son from his after-school program. But Arya? He stood up. Thank you for being kind to a stranger, for being honest when you had no reason to be, for reminding me why I started this company in the first place. He walked toward the door, then stopped and turned back. Oh, and that program you mentioned, the free design classes for kids? Let's make it happen. For real. We'll talk about it in your first week. He left before she could respond, disappearing into the evening crowd. Arya sat there holding her coffee cup, feeling like her entire life had just shifted on its axis. 1 week ago, she'd been desperate, broke, and hopeless. Now she had a job, a purpose, and a millionaire tech founder who believed in her vision. All because she'd offered her table to a tired stranger in a crowded cafe. Arya finished her coffee slowly, savoring it, watching the city move past the windows. Somewhere out there, other people were sitting in cafes with dying laptops, wondering if they'd ever catch a break, wondering if anyone saw them, if anyone cared, if their talent would ever be enough. She was going to find those people. She was going to help them. Not because it would make her look good, or because it was good PR, but because she remembered exactly how it felt to be invisible, to be overlooked, to be brilliant and broke, and desperate for someone to just give you a chance. The cafe was emptying out now, the evening shift winding down. Arya packed up her things, left a generous tip for the barista, and walked out into a city that suddenly felt full of possibility instead of obstacles. 2 weeks until her first day at Reed Labs. 2 weeks to prepare for the job she'd been born to do, even if she hadn't known it until now. She walked home through streets that smelled like rain and new beginnings, past windows lit up with lives she'd never know, under a sky that was just starting to show stars. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, Arya Collins let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, things were going to be okay. Better than okay. They were going to be extraordinary. The 2 weeks before Arya's start date moved with the strange elasticity of time, when something monumental waits on the horizon. Days stretched long with anticipation, then suddenly collapsed into hours that vanished before she could catch her breath. She spent them wrapping up her freelance projects, explaining to confused clients that she was taking a full-time position and trying not to count down the hours like a kid waiting for Christmas morning. On her last Friday as a freelancer, she walked to the bank and deposited the final payment from the yoga studio, $150 that had taken her 40 hours to earn. The teller processed the transaction with the same bored efficiency as always, completely unaware that this was the last time Arya would deposit poverty wages into an account that never seemed to grow, no matter how hard she worked. Starting Monday, she'd have a salary. Benefits. A 401k that actually meant something. The thought made her dizzy. That weekend, she allowed herself one small indulgence. She went to a department store, not the thrift shop she usually haunted, but an actual department store with fluorescent lights and price tags that didn't require intense calculation, and bought 2 new shirts for work. Nothing extravagant, just clean button-downs and colors that didn't scream desperation. The total came to $78, and for the first time in her adult life, Arya paid without mentally subtracting it from her grocery budget. Sunday night, she couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, watching car headlights sweep across the water-stained plaster, wondering if she was ready for this. What if she failed? What if she got there and realized she was in over her head, that Jonah had made a mistake, that she wasn't actually qualified to do any of this? At 3 a.m., her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Can't sleep either? First days are terrifying. You're going to be great. See you tomorrow. Jonah. Arya stared at the message for a full minute before typing back. How did you get my number? Sarah gave it to me. Hope that's okay. Probably should have asked first. It's okay. Thanks for the pep talk. Anytime. Also, fair warning, I'm bringing Theo to the office tomorrow. He wanted to meet Dad's new friend. Hope you're okay with 7-year-olds who ask approximately 400 questions per hour. Arya smiled in the darkness. I think I can handle it. Famous last words. Get some sleep, Arya. Tomorrow's going to be good. She did sleep after that, finally, her anxiety eased by the knowledge that even millionaire CEOs got nervous before important days. When her alarm went off at 6 a.m., she felt almost ready. The Reed Labs office was downtown, a converted warehouse with exposed brick walls and floor-to-ceiling windows that let in cascades of morning light. Arya arrived at 8:45, 15 minutes early, her new shirts pressed and her portfolio bag clutched against her chest like armor. The lobby was sleek but welcoming, all clean lines and warm wood tones. A receptionist with purple hair and a genuine smile greeted her immediately. You must be Arya. We've been expecting you. I'm Maya. Welcome to Reed Labs. She came around the desk to shake Arya's hand. Sarah's just finishing up a call, but she asked me to get you set up with your badge and show you around. Sound good? Sounds great. Arya tried to match Maya's energy, her enthusiasm, even though her hands were shaking. Maya handed her a badge on a lanyard, white with the Reed Labs logo and her name printed underneath. Arya Collins, Creator Community Advocate. Seeing it in print made it real in a way nothing else had. Okay, so quick tour, Maya said, leading her through a security door into the main office space. Kitchen's on the left, coffee's free, obviously, and we stock the fridge with lunch stuff on Wednesdays. Conference rooms are down that hall, but most people just grab the collaboration spaces if they need to meet. Your desk is over here. They wove through an open floor plan that managed to feel spacious, despite being full of people. Designers hunched over tablets, developers typed rapidly with headphones on, small groups clustered around whiteboards covered in sketches and diagrams. The energy was focused but not frantic, purposeful without being oppressive. Here you go, Maya said, stopping at a desk near the windows. Jonah specifically requested you get one with natural light. Said something about how creative people need sunlight. Anyway, your computer's all set up, login info is in that envelope, and if you need anything at all, just message me. I'm in the company Slack as @MayasMagic. Arya set down her bag and stared at the setup. A new laptop, not the cheap model, but the same high-end machine she'd seen other designers using. A second monitor. A comfortable chair that probably cost more than her couch. A small plant in a ceramic pot with a note attached. Welcome to the team. Sarah. This is really mine? She asked. Maya laughed. Yeah, it's really yours. Oh, and heads up, Jonah usually does welcome coffee with new hires around 10. He'll probably swing by then. Until then, Sarah wanted you to start with the onboarding modules. But honestly, take your time settling in. First days are overwhelming enough without rushing through paperwork. She left with a wave, and Arya sat down in her new chair at her new desk in her new job, trying to process that this was actually happening. Around her, the office hummed with activity. People passed by, some offering friendly nods or quick welcome aboard greetings. No one looked at her like she didn't belong. No one seemed surprised to see her there. She was just another person with a desk and a purpose. The feeling was intoxicating. Arya spent the next hour setting up her workspace, going through the onboarding modules, reading through the company handbook. Read Labs had generous vacation policies, comprehensive health insurance, and a whole section on work-life balance that actually seemed sincere. There were employee resource groups, professional development budgets, and a stated commitment to diversity that appeared to be more than just PR speak. At 9:58, Sarah appeared at her desk, immaculate in a navy blazer and carrying 2 coffee cups. Morning, how are you feeling? Honestly, terrified and excited in equal measure. Perfect. That's exactly the right ratio for a first day. Sarah handed her one of the coffees. Vanilla latte, right? I remembered from our video call. The fact that Sarah had noticed, had remembered, made Arya's throat tight. Thank you for all of this. Thank Jonah. He's the one who insisted we move fast on your hire. Sarah perched on the edge of Arya's desk. So here's the plan for today. We're going to keep it light. No pressure, no expectations. I want you to spend time just observing, getting a feel for the company culture. Sit in on some meetings if you want, or just walk around and introduce yourself to people. Your real work starts next week. What exactly is my real work? Arya asked. I mean, I know the job description, but day to day, what does that look like? Sarah's expression turned serious. Honestly, we're still figuring that out. This position is brand new, which means you have a lot of latitude to define it. But broadly speaking, Jonah wants you to be the voice of creators who are struggling to break in. You'll be developing programs, building resources, advocating for changes to our platform that make it more accessible. You'll also be identifying talented designers who might not have traditional portfolios or credentials, people who are getting overlooked by the industry. That's a lot. It is. But you're not doing it alone. You'll have a team. We're hiring 2 more people to work under you in the next month. And you have direct access to Jonah, which around here is basically like having a golden ticket. If you need resources, if you hit a roadblock, if someone's being difficult, you go to him and he makes it happen. Before Arya could respond, a small voice piped up behind them. Is that her? Is that Dad's Café lady? Arya turned to find a little boy staring at her with enormous brown eyes full of curiosity. He was maybe 7 years old, wearing a Star Wars t-shirt and light-up sneakers, holding what appeared to be a half-finished waffle. Jonah stood behind him, one hand on his son's shoulder, looking both proud and slightly apologetic. Theo, we talked about the interrogation thing, Jonah said. You said I could meet her. I said you could meet her politely. But he was smiling. He looked different here, in his element, more relaxed, more himself. He wore dark jeans and a gray Henley, somehow managing to look both casual and CEO appropriate. Arya, this is my son, Theo. Theo, this is Miss Collins. Just Arya's fine, she said, kneeling down to be at eye level with the boy. Hi, Theo. Nice to meet you. Did you really let my dad sit at your table when nobody else would? Theo asked, his tone suggesting this was the most important question in the world. I did. Why? Because he looked tired and the cafe was crowded, and it seemed like the right thing to do. Theo considered this with the gravity of a judge deliberating a verdict. Then he smiled, revealing a gap where he'd lost a front tooth. Dad said you're going to help people like you helped him. People who are sad and need jobs. Not just jobs, Arya corrected gently. I'm going to help people who are really good at creating things, like drawing and designing, but who haven't had the chances they deserve. Does that make sense? Like Miss Rachel at my school. She's really good at art, but she works at a grocery store because art doesn't pay money. Theo said this with the matter-of-fact authority of a child repeating adult conversations he doesn't fully understand. Exactly like Miss Rachel, Arya said, her heart breaking a little. That's who I want to help. Theo nodded solemnly, then turned to his father. I like her. She can stay. Jonah laughed, a real laugh that transformed his whole face. I'm so glad we have your approval. Now, buddy, you need to finish your breakfast in the kitchen, okay? Let the adults talk for a minute. Can I come back after? We'll see. Theo ran off, his light-up shoes flashing with each step. Sarah excused herself, leaving Arya and Jonah alone in the suddenly quiet space between desks. Sorry about that, Jonah said. He's been excited to meet you all weekend. I might have talked about you more than I should have. It's sweet. Arya stood up, brushing off her knees. He seems like a great kid. He is. He's the reason I do all this. Jonah gestured vaguely at the office around them. After my wife died, I realized I didn't want to build a company just to build a company. I wanted to build something that would make Theo proud when he's old enough to understand what it means. Something that actually helps people instead of just extracting value from them. That's what you're doing. Trying to. But I've realized I can't do it alone. I've gotten too far removed from what it's actually like out there for people starting out. That's where you come in. He met her eyes. I need you to keep me honest, Arya. To tell me when we're failing people. To push back when I'm making decisions from an ivory tower. Can you do that? Even if it makes you uncomfortable? Especially if it makes me uncomfortable. That's the whole point. Then yes, Arya said. I can do that. Jonah smiled, the same genuine smile from the cafe, the one that made him look younger and less burdened. Good. Now, I know Sarah said to take it easy today, but I was hoping you'd sit in on a product meeting at 11. I want you to see how decisions get made around here. Start thinking about where you might push back or suggest changes. No pressure to say anything, just observe. I'd like that. Great. Conference room B. I'll see you there. He started to walk away, then paused. And Arya, I'm really glad you're here. The product meeting started at 11:03, which Arya learned was considered on time in tech culture. The conference room was full of people, product managers, designers, developers, marketing folks, all settling into chairs with laptops and coffee cups. Jonah sat at the head of the table. He'd shifted into CEO mode, his posture more formal, his expression focused. Arya took a seat near the back, trying to make herself invisible. Okay, Jonah said, pulling up a presentation on the screen. We're here to discuss the new pro-tier pricing structure. Marketing wants to introduce a premium subscription level at $49 per month. Let's talk about it. A woman in a crisp blazer, her name tag said Jennifer, VP of Marketing, launched into a presentation. The premium tier would include advanced features, priority support, and exclusive templates. Market research suggested they could capture significant revenue from professional designers willing to pay for premium access. The numbers were impressive. Projected annual revenue increase of $8.7 million, increased platform engagement, better retention rates among high-value users. Everyone around the table nodded along. This was clearly a done deal, just going through the motions of a meeting to make it official. Arya felt something twist in her gut. She raised her hand. The room went quiet. Jennifer stopped mid-sentence. Everyone turned to look at the new girl in the back, who apparently didn't understand that you didn't interrupt the VP of Marketing. Yes, Jennifer said, her tone suggesting this better be good. Arya's heart hammered, but she kept her voice steady. I'm sorry, I know I'm new here, but I have a question about the pricing. Go ahead, Jonah said. His expression was neutral, but there was something in his eyes. Anticipation, maybe. Like he'd been waiting for this. The features you're moving to the premium tier, the advanced layer controls, the professional export options, the expanded color palette tools. Those are things professional designers need to do their jobs, right? Correct, Jennifer said. That's why we're confident pros will pay for them. But what about designers who are trying to become professionals? People who are building their portfolios, who are taking on their first paid clients, who need those tools to do professional quality work, but can't afford $49 a month on top of their existing subscriptions. Jennifer's smile tightened. Those users can continue using the free tier or the standard subscription at $19 per month, which doesn't include the professional tools. So basically, you're saying that if you can't already afford professional tools, you can't access professional features, which means you can't produce professional work, which means you can't charge professional rates, which means you can't afford professional tools. Arya heard herself talking faster, her voice rising slightly. It's a circular trap. You're locking out the exact people who need help the most. The room was dead silent now. Jennifer's face had gone rigid. A few people were typing rapidly on their laptops, probably slacking each other about the new girl's audacity. That's an interesting perspective, Jennifer said in a tone that meant the opposite. But from a business standpoint, Jonah interrupted quietly, Arya's right. Jennifer turned to him, clearly surprised. Jonah, we've been over the numbers. The numbers look great if we're only thinking about short-term revenue. But what's our mission statement, Jennifer? To democratize design and empower creators. And are we empowering creators by putting professional tools behind a paywall most struggling designers can't afford? Jennifer opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. We still need to be profitable. Agreed. So let's find another way. Jonah leaned forward, his CEO persona fully engaged now. Here's what we're going to do. Keep the premium tier, but move the professional features back to the standard $19 level. The premium tier focuses on convenience features, extra storage, priority rendering, advanced collaboration tools, things that are nice to have, but not essential for producing quality work. That's going to cut our projected revenue in half, Jennifer protested. Maybe, or maybe it's going to build the kind of loyalty and word of mouth that brings in more users overall. Maybe we'll be known as the platform that doesn't gatekeep talent behind money. He glanced at Arya. What do you think? Would that work better? Arya felt every eye in the room on her. Yes, she said. That would work much better. And if you want to increase revenue, maybe look at the enterprise tier for companies and agencies. They have budgets. Charge them more. But don't make individual creators choose between paying rent and accessing the tools they need to build careers. Jonah smiled. There you go. Jennifer, can you rework the proposal with those changes? Jennifer looked like she wanted to argue, but she just nodded tightly. I'll have something by end of week. Great. Thanks, everyone. The meeting broke up. People filed out, several casting curious or annoyed glances at Arya. She stayed seated, suddenly exhausted, wondering if she'd just made a terrible mistake on her first day. Jonah waited until the room had cleared, then closed the door and sat down across from her. How are you feeling? He asked. Like I might have just made enemies of your entire marketing department. Probably, but you also just proved exactly why I hired you. He leaned back in his chair. Do you know how many meetings I've sat in where everyone just nods along, agreeing with whatever the senior people say, even when the senior people are wrong? Too many. We've gotten complacent. We've forgotten what it's like to be the struggling designer choosing between software and groceries. Jennifer's going to hate me. Jennifer will get over it, and if she doesn't, that's her problem, not yours. Jonah's expression softened. Arya, you did exactly what I asked you to do. You made me uncomfortable. You called out a decision that went against our values. That's your job now. Some people aren't going to like it, but that doesn't mean it's wrong. I remember what it was like, needing those tools and not being able to afford them, having to choose between a software subscription and my phone bill. I don't want other people to have to make those choices. And now you're in a position to actually change that. He stood up. Come on, let me show you something. Jonah led her through the office to a smaller conference room tucked away in a corner. Inside, the walls were covered with printouts, photos, screenshots, testimonials from Read Labs users. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands, arranged in a collage that covered every available surface. This is my reminder, Jonah said. Every single one of these is a creator who wrote to us about how Read Labs changed their life, how they got their first client, landed their first job, finally saw themselves as real designers. I come here when I need to remember why we do this. Arya walked along the walls, reading the stories. A single mother in Ohio who'd built a freelance career from her kitchen table, a teenager in rural Montana who'd gotten into design school on the strength of her Reed Labs portfolio, a middle-aged man who'd switched careers after 20 years in retail, using free tutorials and affordable software to reinvent himself. These are the people we serve, Jonah said, not the ones who can drop $49 a month without thinking about it. These are the people who count every dollar, who fight for every opportunity, who have talent and drive but not privilege. This is who you're here to protect. Arya touched one of the photos, a young woman holding a laptop, grinning at the camera, caption reading, "Got my first design job today. Thank you, Reed Labs, for making this possible." "I want to fill this room," she said quietly. "I want so many success stories that we need a bigger wall." "Then let's do it." Jonah moved toward the door. "You've got 2 weeks to settle in, meet the team, learn our systems. Then I want you to come back to me with a proposal. What programs do we need? What resources are missing? What are we doing wrong? And how do we fix it? No holding back. I want your full vision. What if it's expensive? Then it's expensive. Arya, I didn't build this company to hoard money. I built it to make a difference. If your vision requires resources, we'll find them." He paused at the doorway. "Oh, and about Jennifer, don't worry too much. She's ambitious and protective of her territory, but she's not unreasonable. Give her some time to cool down. Maybe grab coffee with her next week, explain where you're coming from. You might be surprised." After Jonah left, Arya stayed in the room for a while longer, reading the stories on the walls. Each one was a life changed, a dream realized, a person who'd been given a chance when others had overlooked them. This was her job now, not just a paycheck or a title, but a genuine opportunity to help people like these, people like her. The weight of it was enormous. The possibility of it was intoxicating. She pulled out her phone and took a photo of the wall, wanting to remember this moment. Then she headed back to her desk, where a small crowd had gathered, colleagues introducing themselves, welcoming her to the team, asking about her background. Maya appeared with a cupcake, a tradition apparently for new hires. "You survived your first meeting," she said with a grin, "and from what I hear, you made quite the impression." "Is that good or bad?" "Good. Definitely good. We need more people willing to push back around here." Maya lowered her voice. "Between you and me, that premium tier pricing has been bothering a lot of us. We just didn't know how to say it without sounding like we were against making money." "You're not against making money. You're against making money at the expense of your mission." "Exactly. See? You already get it." Maya handed her the cupcake, chocolate with vanilla frosting. "Welcome to Reed Labs, Arya. I think you're going to fit in just fine." The rest of the day passed in a blur of introductions, orientations, and information overload. By 5 p.m., Arya's brain felt like it had been through a marathon. She was packing up her things when Theo appeared at her desk again, his father trailing behind him looking tired but content. "Miss Arya," Theo said formally, "Dad says you had a good first day." "I think I did." "Did you help people?" "I tried to." "Then it was a good day." Theo considered this settled fact, then added, "We're going for pizza. Do you want to come?" Arya glanced at Jonah, who shrugged. "No pressure, but Theo's right. We are getting pizza, and you're welcome to join if you want. Fair warning, though, he's going to ask you approximately 400 questions." "I told you it would be 400, Theo said triumphantly. Arya laughed, surprising herself with how natural it felt. "You know what? Pizza sounds perfect." They walked to a small place 3 blocks from the office, the kind of neighborhood joint with checkered tablecloths and a menu that hadn't changed in 20 years. Theo chattered the entire way, asking Arya about her favorite color, her favorite animal, whether she liked Star Wars, and if she thought dinosaurs could come back if scientists tried really hard. Inside, they grabbed a boot. Jonah ordered a large pepperoni pizza and 3 sodas without consulting the menu. "So," he said once they were settled, "honest feedback. How was today, really?" "Overwhelming, exciting, terrifying, all of it at once." Arya took a sip of her soda. "I keep waiting to wake up and find out this is all some elaborate dream." "It's real. You're stuck with us now." "Did you mean what you said? About giving me 2 weeks and then letting me propose whatever I want?" "Completely. I want your unfiltered vision, Arya. Not what you think I want to hear, not some watered-down version that you think will be easier to approve. I want you to tell me what would actually make a difference. Arya thought about the stories on the wall, about the designers choosing between tools and rent, about her own years of struggling in silence. I have ideas, she said. A lot of them, but they're big. They're going to require serious resources and major platform changes and probably pissing off some more VPs. Good. Big problems need big solutions. Theo tugged on his father's sleeve. Dad, can I go play the arcade game? Jonah handed him a few quarters. Don't spend it all on the claw machine. You never win. Today might be my lucky day. Theo ran off toward the ancient arcade cabinet in the corner, leaving Arya and Jonah alone. He's really great, Arya said, watching the boy insert quarters with intense concentration. You're doing an amazing job with him. Most days I feel like I'm barely hanging on. Jonah's voice was quiet, honest. Being a single parent is the hardest thing I've ever done. Harder than starting a company, harder than raising capital, harder than anything. Some nights I lie awake wondering if I'm screwing it all up, if he's going to need therapy for all the ways I'm inevitably failing him. He doesn't look like a kid who's being failed. He looks happy, confident, loved. I hope so. I'm trying. He paused. You know what the worst part is? Everyone keeps telling me I need to find a new wife. Like Theo needs a mother figure, like I can't possibly raise him alone. They don't say it to be cruel. They think they're being helpful. But what they don't understand is that I'm not looking for someone to replace his mother. I'm just trying to be the best parent I can be. The pizza arrived and they ate in comfortable silence for a while. Theo returned from the arcade victorious. He'd actually won a small stuffed dinosaur from the claw machine, which he immediately declared was named Rex and would live on his bookshelf forever. See? He told his father. I told you today was my lucky day. Jonah smiled, ruffling his son's hair. Yeah, buddy, I guess it is. Walking back to the office parking lot later, Theo between them holding Rex in one hand and his father's hand in the other, Arya felt something shift in her chest. This wasn't just a job. This wasn't just a paycheck or a career opportunity. This was a family that had let her in. A CEO who trusted her enough to challenge him. A little boy who decided she was worth 400 questions. At her car, the ancient Honda that barely started most mornings, Jonah paused. Thank you, he said, for today, for speaking up in that meeting, for being exactly who I hoped you'd be. Thank you for giving me the chance to be her. Theo hugged her legs suddenly, unexpectedly. Will you be there tomorrow? I'll be there, Arya promised. She drove home through city streets that felt different now, transformed by the simple fact that she had somewhere to be in the morning, a desk with her name on it, a purpose that mattered, people who believed in her. In her apartment, Arya made herself dinner, real dinner, not ramen, and sat at her kitchen table with her laptop. She opened a blank document and started typing. Proposal for Creator Accessibility Initiative. The ideas flowed faster than she could type them. Scholarship programs for designers from low-income backgrounds. Free premium accounts for students and those below the poverty line. Mentorship networks connecting established designers with those just starting out. Resource libraries with tutorials in multiple languages. Office hours where ReadLab staff would review portfolios and give feedback. She wrote until midnight, until her eyes burned and her fingers ached, until she'd poured every idea she'd ever had about making design more accessible onto the page. Some of it was probably too ambitious. Some of it might be impossible to implement. But it was real. It was honest. And it was exactly what Jonah had asked for. Arya saved the document, closed her laptop, and went to bed with her phone on the nightstand. Before sleep took her, she checked her messages one more time. There was a text from Jonah, sent an hour ago. Theo's asleep. He told me you're his new friend and that I should make sure you're happy at work, because good people are hard to find. The kid's got decent instincts. Arya smiled in the darkness and typed back, Tell him Rex is very lucky to have him. See you tomorrow. Tomorrow. A word that used to fill her with dread now filled her with anticipation. Tomorrow she'd go back to Read Labs. Tomorrow she'd keep building something that mattered. Tomorrow she'd continue being the person Jonah had seen in that cafe. Someone who led with kindness, who remembered what it meant to struggle, who hadn't let the world make her bitter. She fell asleep thinking about the wall of stories, about adding new ones, about creating a future where talent mattered more than privilege. and where kindness wasn't a weakness but a superpower. In the morning, everything would begin again, and this time, Arya Collins was ready. The proposal sat on Jonah's desk for 3 days. Arya knew this because she checked her email obsessively, refreshing every few minutes like someone waiting for medical test results. She'd sent it Wednesday evening, all 47 pages of detailed programs, budget projections, implementation timelines, and case studies supporting why each initiative mattered. By Saturday afternoon, she'd convinced herself it was too ambitious, too expensive, too naive. She'd overstepped. She'd misread what Jonah actually wanted. She'd ruined everything before it even began. On Saturday evening, her phone rang, Jonah's name on the screen. "Hello? Can you come to the office tomorrow?" His voice was hard to read. "I know it's Sunday, and I know you should be resting, but I want to talk about your proposal in person. Just you and me." Arya's stomach dropped. "Is it bad?" "Just come in. Around noon, I'll order lunch." He hung up before she could ask anything else. Arya stared at her phone, trying to decode the tone of his voice, the brevity of the call. Was he angry, disappointed, about to fire her after less than 2 weeks? She barely slept that night. Sunday morning arrived gray and drizzly, the kind of weather that matched her mood perfectly. Arya dressed carefully, professional but not trying too hard, and drove to the Reed Labs office with her heart in her throat. The building was mostly empty on weekends, the lobby dark except for security lights. She badged in and took the elevator to the 3rd floor, where Jonah's office overlooked the city. He was already there, standing at the window with his hands in his pockets, staring out at the rain-soaked streets below. On his desk, her proposal sat open, covered in handwritten notes and sticky flags. "Thanks for coming," he said without turning around. "I know this is your day off." "It's fine. I wasn't doing anything important." A lie. She'd been pacing her apartment and catastrophizing. Jonah finally turned to face her. He looked tired, like maybe he hadn't slept well either. "I've read your proposal 7 times, front to back, every word, every footnote. I've run the numbers. I've thought about implementation. I've considered every possible angle." Here it comes, Arya thought. The letdown. This is all very ambitious but not realistic. The corporate speak for thanks but no thanks. "And?" she managed. "And it's fucking brilliant." Arya blinked. "What?" "It's everything I hoped you'd come up with, and more. The scholarship program, the income-based pricing tiers, the mentorship network, the resource library, all of it. You didn't hold back. You didn't play it safe. You gave me exactly what I asked for." He picked up the proposal, flipping through the marked pages. This section about partnering with community colleges and vocational schools to identify talent? Genius. This idea about having successful Reed Labs users volunteer as mentors? Perfect. And this? He tapped a page covered in yellow highlights. This proposal to create a hardship fund for designers facing emergencies? Medical bills? Evictions? Disasters? Arya, this is the kind of thing that actually changes lives. "So you like it?" "I love it. I want to implement all of it." He set the proposal down and looked at her directly. "I'm approving a $3.2 million budget for year 1. That should cover the scholarship program, the hardship fund, platform upgrades, and hiring the team you'll need. In year 2, assuming we hit our metrics, we'll double it." Arya felt dizzy. $3.2 million? Is that not enough? Because we can watch. No, it's, Jonah, that's more than I imagined. That's more than I thought possible. Then you weren't thinking big enough. He smiled, that genuine smile that transformed his whole face. "Arya, this is what I wanted. Someone who understands the problem because they've lived it. Someone who can articulate solutions that actually matter. You've given me a roadmap for how Reed Labs can become what it was always supposed to be." "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll run with it. Say you'll build this thing and make it real." He pulled out a chair at the small conference table in his office. "Sit. Let's talk details. I ordered Thai food. Should be here in 20 minutes. They spent the next 4 hours going through the proposal section by section. Jonah challenged some of her assumptions, pushed her to think bigger in places, helped her refine the implementation timeline. He was brilliant at this, seeing the vision while also understanding the practical realities of execution. He asked questions Arya hadn't considered, identified potential roadblocks she'd missed, and offered solutions drawn from his years of building a company from nothing. The mentorship network, he said, pointing to page 23. I love it, but we need to be careful about matching. A bad mentor can do more harm than no mentor. How do we vet people? How do we train them? How do we handle conflicts? I was thinking we'd start with a pilot program, Arya said, her initial nervousness fading as she got into the work. Maybe 20 mentors and 40 mentees. We run it for 3 months, gather feedback, iterate based on what we learn. Scale up slowly rather than launching something half-baked that damages trust. Smart. And for the scholarship program, you're proposing full premium access plus a $500 quarterly stipend for software and equipment. That's generous. Are we confident we can sustain that? The math works if we cap it at 50 scholarships in year 1 and raise it to 100 in year 2. And honestly, $500 per quarter isn't that much when you consider what designers actually need. A decent tablet alone costs $400. We're not making anyone rich, we're just removing some of the barriers. Jonah nodded slowly. You're right, and the hardship fund, this is the one that got me. Tell me more about how you envision this working. Arya took a breath. This was the part she'd agonized over most, the part that felt most personal. It's simple. Any Read Labs user can apply if they're facing a genuine emergency. Medical crisis, eviction, natural disaster, situations where they need immediate help and have nowhere else to turn. We'd have a small committee review applications confidentially. Maximum grant of $2,000 per person per year. It's not enough to solve everything, but it might be enough to keep someone afloat until they can get back on their feet. How do we prevent fraud? We can't, not entirely. Some people will probably game the system, but I'd rather help 9 people who genuinely need it and get scammed by one than be so paranoid about fraud that we help nobody. She met his eyes. If my mom had something like this when she had her stroke, it would have changed everything. Not just the money, the knowledge that someone cared, that we weren't completely alone. That's worth the risk. Jonah was quiet for a long moment. You know what? You're absolutely right. We budget for some level of fraud, we do our due diligence, but we lead with trust instead of suspicion. That's the kind of company I want to build. The Thai food arrived, and they ate while continuing to refine the plans. Jonah had ideas Arya hadn't considered, like creating a public dashboard showing the impact of these programs in real time, making the work transparent and accountable. Arya suggested quarterly showcases where scholarship recipients could display their work, building community and celebrating success. Together, they sketched out a vision that felt both ambitious and achievable, idealistic and grounded in reality. There's one more thing, Jonah said as they were finishing up. He pulled out a folder from his desk drawer. I want you to have equity in the company. Not a huge amount, you're still early in your career, but enough that you have real ownership. Enough that if Read Labs succeeds, you succeed too. Arya stared at the documents he slid across the table. Stock options, vesting schedule, numbers that made her head spin. Jonah, I can't. This is too much. It's not nearly enough for what you're going to do here. But it's a start. He leaned back in his chair. Arya, I don't want you to just work for Read Labs. I want you to feel like you're building it with me. Like this is your company too. Because the truth is, the programs you're creating are going to define what we become. They're going to be our legacy. Why me? The question burst out before she could stop it. You could have hired someone with more experience, more credentials, someone who already knew how to do this. Why take a chance on me? Jonah was silent for a moment, his expression thoughtful. Can I tell you a story? Okay. When I was 24, I had an idea for what eventually became Read Labs. I pitched it to every investor I could get a meeting with. 27 pitches, 27 rejections. They all said the same thing. I was too young, too inexperienced, the market was too crowded. One guy told me to get a real job and stop wasting people's time. He smiled without humor. Then I met this woman, Elena Martinez. She was a small-time angel investor, didn't have the big reputation or the massive fund. But she listened to my pitch, and when I was done, she said something I'll never forget. What did she say? She said, everyone else is looking at your resume. I'm looking at your fire. You have something they don't. You actually care about solving this problem. That's worth more than 10 years of experience. Jonah's voice softened. She wrote me a check for $100,000 on the spot. It wasn't enough to fully fund the company, but it was enough to get started. She took a chance on me when nobody else would. What happened to her? She's still on our board, still one of my closest advisors, and still the person I call when I need someone to tell me the truth instead of what I want to hear. He looked at Arya directly. When I met you in that cafe, when I heard you talk about what you do with resources, I saw that same fire Elena saw in me. You don't just want to help people abstractly. You need to help them because you've been there. That's not something you can teach. That's something you either have or you don't. Arya felt tears threatening. She blinked them back. I won't let you down. I know you won't. But Arya, if you do mess up, and you will, because everyone does, I need you to know it's okay. We'll figure it out together. That's what partners do. They spent another hour working through logistics, setting up meetings with the teams Arya would need to coordinate with, establishing timelines for the first programs to launch. By the time they finished, the rain had stopped, and weak afternoon sunlight was breaking through the clouds. Go home, Jonah said finally. Enjoy what's left of your weekend. Tomorrow we start making this real. But today, just let yourself feel good about what you've created. Arya gathered her things, but paused at the door. Jonah? Thank you for everything, for seeing something in me, for taking the chance. Thank you for being worth the chance. She left him there in his office, surrounded by windows and possibilities, and drove home with her hands shaking on the steering wheel. $3.2 million, equity in the company, full approval to build everything she'd dreamed of. It was too much. It was overwhelming. It was perfect. That night, Arya called her mother. She told her everything about the proposal, about Jonah's response, about the budget that would allow them to actually change lives. Catherine cried, which made Arya cry, and they stayed on the phone for 2 hours talking about all the things that were suddenly possible. I'm so proud of you, Catherine said for the 5th time. My baby girl changing the world. I haven't changed anything yet, Mom. I just have permission to try. You'll do more than try. You'll succeed. I know you will. After they hung up, Arya sat in her apartment and let herself actually feel it. The relief, the excitement, the sheer overwhelming gratitude of being given a chance to do meaningful work. For so long, she'd felt invisible, overlooked, like she was shouting into a void that never answered back. Now someone was listening. Someone believed in her. Someone had given her the resources to actually make a difference. The next morning, Arya arrived at the office to find a crowd gathered near the main entrance. Maya saw her and waved her over urgently. You need to see this, Maya said, barely containing her excitement. Someone had put up a banner over the main doors. Welcome to the new Reed Labs, where talent matters more than privilege. Underneath it, Jonah stood with Theo beside him, both of them grinning. When Theo saw Arya, he ran over and grabbed her hand. Dad says you're going to help lots of people like you helped him, Theo announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. He says you're going to change everything. I'm going to try, Arya said, suddenly aware of all the eyes on her. Jonah walked over, and the crowd parted instinctively. Everyone, he said, his voice carrying across the lobby, I want to officially introduce you to Arya Collins and the Creator Accessibility Initiative. Over the next year, we're going to be implementing major changes to make Reed Labs more accessible, more equitable, and more aligned with our core mission. Some of these changes will be uncomfortable. Some of them will require us to rethink how we do business. But all of them are necessary. He gestured to Arya. Arya is going to be leading this work, and she has my complete support. If she needs resources, she gets them. If she needs access, she gets it. If she challenges something we're doing, we listen. I know change can be hard, but I'm asking all of you to embrace it, to remember why we built this company, and to help us become what we've always said we wanted to be. There was applause, genuine and warm. Some people looked skeptical. Jennifer from marketing was notably stone-faced, but most seemed genuinely excited. Maya was beaming. Sarah gave Arya a thumbs up from across the lobby. No pressure, right? Arya whispered to Jonah as the crowd dispersed. You've got this, he said quietly. And remember, I'm right here if you need me. The next 6 weeks were a controlled chaos of building and implementing and iterating at a pace that left Arya both exhilarated and exhausted. She hired a team, 2 program coordinators who understood the mission viscerally because they'd lived it themselves. Marcus had been a homeless teen who'd taught himself design in public libraries. Jasmine had worked 3 jobs while caring for her sick father, building a portfolio between midnight shifts. They were perfect. Together, they built the scholarship application system, working late into the night to make sure every question was necessary, every requirement was justified, every barrier removed. They reached out to community colleges and nonprofits, building relationships with organizations that could help them identify talented designers who might not even know to apply. The mentorship network took shape through careful vetting and training. They recruited 20 experienced designers who understood what it meant to struggle, who could offer guidance without condescension. The pilot matching was thoughtful, pairing people not just by design style, but by shared experiences, creating connections that went deeper than technique. The hardship fund was the most emotionally difficult to set up. Each application that came in represented someone in crisis, someone desperately needing help. Arya and her team reviewed them with the gravity they deserved, approving grants for a woman whose computer had died right before a major freelance deadline, a man whose apartment had flooded and destroyed all his equipment, a mother whose childcare had fallen through and who needed funds to keep working. Every grant they approved felt like a small miracle. Every person they helped sent thank you messages that made Arya cry at her desk. "You're saving my life," one recipient wrote. "I don't mean that dramatically. I literally mean you're allowing me to keep pursuing the career that makes my life worth living. Thank you for seeing me when everyone else looked away." Arya printed that message and put it on her desk where she could see it every day. 6 weeks after that Sunday meeting in Jonah's office, they were ready to launch publicly. Jonah wanted to make a big announcement, to get press coverage and industry attention, but Arya convinced him to do something different. "Let's tell the people who matter first," she said. "Let's tell the Read Labs community, the actual users, not the press. Let's invite them to be part of this with us." So they did. Instead of a press release, they created a video. Arya stood in front of the camera, nervous but determined, and told her story. The struggling years, the rejection, the moment in the cafe that changed everything. Then she introduced the programs, explained how they worked, and invited people to apply or get involved. "This isn't charity," she said into the camera. "This is investment. Investment in talent that exists everywhere but gets recognized nowhere. Investment in people who have the skill and the drive, but not the privilege. Investment in the idea that creativity matters more than credentials." She paused, looking directly into the lens. "If that's you, if you're the designer working from a cafe because you can't afford internet at home, if you're the creator choosing between software and groceries, if you're the talent that everyone overlooks, we see you, we believe in you, and we want to help." The video went live on a Tuesday morning. By Tuesday afternoon, it had been viewed 47,000 times. By Wednesday, they'd received over 300 scholarship applications and 200 mentorship requests. By Friday, the video had gone viral on design Twitter, with established creators sharing their own stories of struggle and triumph, their own experiences of being overlooked until someone gave them a chance. The press coverage followed, but it was almost an afterthought. The real impact was in the messages that flooded in, the stories people shared, the community that began to form around the idea that maybe, finally, the design industry could be something better than it had been. Brielle, Arya's old college acquaintance, sent her a message. "I saw your video. I had no idea you were struggling so much. I'm sorry I didn't see it. I'm sorry I said those stupid things about hard work being enough. You're doing something really important." Arya read it 3 times, then typed back, "Thank you for saying that. And if you're serious about understanding, I'd love to have coffee and talk about how people with privilege can help instead of hurt." They met the following week. It was awkward at first, but Brielle listened, really listened, when Arya explained what it had been like. The conversation wasn't comfortable, but it was real. And it ended with Brielle volunteering to be a mentor, to use her connections and privilege to help open doors for others. Progress, Arya thought. Slow, uncomfortable, but real progress. 2 months after launch, they held their first showcase. 20 scholarship recipients displayed their work in the Read Labs office, transformed for the evening into a gallery space. The energy was electric. Young designers showing portfolios that rivaled anything Arya had seen from expensive design schools, talking about their processes with passion and intelligence and hunger. Jonah worked the room like he was at a museum gala, asking questions, praising work, making connections between scholarship recipients and potential clients or employers. Theo was there too, wearing a little suit his father had clearly picked out, asking the designers to explain their work like it was the most fascinating thing in the world. Arya stood near the back, watching it all unfold, when a young woman approached her. She was maybe 22, wearing a dress that was probably her nicest outfit, clutching a portfolio nervously. "Are you Arya Collins?" she asked. "I am. I'm Emma Chen. I got one of the first scholarships." Her eyes filled with tears. I needed to thank you in person. I was about to give up. I'd applied to 60 jobs and gotten nowhere. I couldn't afford the software I needed. I was going back to my parents' restaurant to work full-time, and then I got the email about the scholarship, and her voice broke. "You gave me my dream back. You gave me hope." Arya hugged her, this stranger who felt like family, and let herself cry too. "You did the work," she said. "I just removed some barriers. The talent was always yours." "But the barriers would have stopped me without you." Emma pulled back, wiping her eyes. "I'm going to pay this forward someday. When I'm successful, when I have resources, I'm going to help someone else the way you helped me. I promise." "I believe you," Arya said. And she did. That night, after everyone had left and the gallery had been cleaned up, Arya stood in the empty office looking at the wall of success stories in Jonah's reminder room. It had grown. Dozens of new photos, new testimonials, new lives changed. They were going to need a bigger wall soon. Jonah found her there, Theo asleep on his shoulder, the boy's dress shoes dangling. "You did good tonight," Jonah said softly, so as not to wake his son. "We did good. This was all of us. But it started with you, with your vision." He adjusted Theo's weight, the practice movement of a single parent who'd learned to do everything one-handed. "You know what Elena, my investor, said when I told her about all this?" "What?" "She said, that girl's going to surpass you someday, and when she does, you better celebrate it instead of feeling threatened." He smiled. "I told her I was already planning the party." Arya laughed, then grew serious. "Jonah, I need to tell you something." "Okay." "That day in the cafe, when you asked me about the $10 million, when you tested me to see if I was different from everyone else," she paused. "It wasn't a test for me. I wasn't trying to impress you. I was just being honest because that's all I knew how to be. And I think that's important for you to know. I'm not some saint. I'm just someone who remembers what it was like to need help and never get it." "I know that," Jonah said. "That's why it worked. You can't fake the kind of authenticity you have. People either have it or they don't." He shifted Theo again. "I should get this guy home. But Arya, thank you for everything you're doing, for everything you're going to do. Thank you for letting me do it." After they left, Arya stayed a little longer, adding one more photo to the wall, the image from tonight's showcase, all 20 scholarship recipients standing together, holding their work, their faces bright with possibility and pride. She stepped back and looked at what they'd built in just 2 months. It was substantial. It was real. But it was also just the beginning. There were still thousands of designers out there struggling in silence, still people choosing between their dreams and their rent, still talent being overlooked because it didn't come wrapped in the right packaging. But now there was also hope. Now there was proof that things could change. Now there was a roadmap for how to build something better. Arya pulled out her phone and sent a message to her team. "Tomorrow, we start planning year 2. Think bigger. We're just getting started." Marcus responded immediately. "Hell yes." Jasmine sent a string of fire emojis. Arya smiled, turned off the lights, and walked out into a night that felt full of promise. Somewhere out there, someone was sitting in a cafe with a dying laptop, wondering if they'd ever catch a break, wondering if anyone saw them, wondering if their talent would ever be enough. Soon, Arya thought, soon they'd find out that someone was looking for them, someone believed in them, someone had built a ladder specifically so they could climb. The city light stretched out before her, each one a window into a life she'd never know. But some of those lives, more every day, were being changed by the work she was doing, by the programs she'd built, by the vision she'd had the courage to voice. It wasn't everything, but it was enough. For now, it was enough, and tomorrow they'd make it even better. 3 months into the Creator Accessibility Initiative, Aria walked into the office on a gray Monday morning to find an email that made her blood run cold. The subject line read, "Concerns regarding CAI budget and ROI." It was from the CFO, Richard Hastings, a man she'd met exactly twice and who'd seemed pleasant enough both times. The email was copied to Jonah, Sarah, and half the executive team. Aria's hands shook as she opened it. The message was polite but devastating. Richard had run the numbers on the scholarship program, the hardship fund, and the mentorship network. He'd calculated cost per user, return on investment, and projected revenue impact. His conclusion was clear. The programs were expensive, the financial returns were minimal, and from a pure business standpoint, they couldn't be justified long-term. "I understand the mission-driven value," he wrote, "but we need to be realistic about sustainable growth. I'm recommending we scale back the CAI budget by 60% and refocus on initiatives with clear revenue pathways." 60%. That would gut everything. They'd have to cut the scholarship program in half, eliminate the hardship fund entirely, reduce the mentorship network to a skeleton crew. All the lives they were changing, all the people they were helping, gone, because the numbers didn't add up on a spreadsheet. Aria sat at her desk, reading the email over and over, feeling everything she'd built start to crumble. Around her, the office hummed with its usual Monday morning energy, people arriving with coffee and weekend stories, completely unaware that the program she'd poured her soul into was being threatened. Her phone buzzed. "Jonah, don't panic, meeting at 10, we'll handle this." But how could they handle it? Richard had the numbers, he had the data, he had the fiduciary responsibility to maximize shareholder value. And Aria had, what? Stories, testimonials? The intangible value of changed lives? Marcus appeared at her desk, his face grim. "You saw the email?" "Yeah." "This is bullshit. We're changing lives and they want to talk about ROI?" His voice was tight with anger. People like Richard don't get it because they've never had to struggle. They've never had to choose between their dreams and their rent. "He's just doing his job," Aria said, though the words felt hollow. "Protecting the company's financial interests." "And who's protecting the people who actually need help?" Aria didn't have an answer. At 10 o'clock, she walked into the conference room to find the entire executive team assembled. Jonah sat at the head of the table, his expression neutral. Richard was there with printouts and charts. Jennifer from marketing looked uncomfortable. Sarah gave Aria an encouraging nod. "Thanks for coming, Aria," Richard said, his tone professional but not unkind. "I know my email was probably upsetting, but I think it's important we have an honest conversation about the financial realities here." "I agree," Aria said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Let's talk about it." Richard pulled up a presentation. Charts showing program costs versus projected revenue. Graphs demonstrating that scholarship recipients weren't converting to paid premium users at the rates they'd hoped. Data indicating that the hardship fund was being utilized more than budgeted, creating sustainability concerns. "The numbers don't lie," Richard said. "In 3 months, we've spent $847,000 on these programs. Our revenue increase from the same demographic is only $23,000. That's a 97% loss on investment. No company can sustain that." "You're measuring the wrong things," Aria said quietly. Richard paused. "I'm sorry." "You're measuring direct revenue from scholarship recipients. But you're not measuring the impact on brand loyalty, on user growth, on the quality of our community. You're not measuring the designers who joined Read Labs specifically because they saw what we were doing. You're not measuring the press coverage, the industry reputation, the talent pipeline we're building. Those are important factors," Richard acknowledged, "but they don't pay the bills." "Don't they?" Aria leaned forward. "Maya, can you pull up the user growth chart for the last 3 months?" Maya, who'd been sitting quietly in the corner, pulled up a different presentation. "Since the CAI launch, we've seen a 34% increase in new user registrations. 61% of those users cited the accessibility programs as a major factor in choosing Read Labs over competitors. User engagement is up 28%. Retention rates have improved by 19%. And this is the big one. Premium conversion among new users is 15% higher than our previous cohort. Richard frowned, studying the numbers. That's significant. But you can't directly attribute all of that to the CAI programs. Can I? Arya asked. Richard, 3 months ago, we were just another design platform. Now we're the platform that actually gives a damn about struggling creators. That reputation has value. It attracts users. It builds loyalty. It creates word of mouth that money can't buy. But the direct costs are an investment in our future. Jonah spoke for the first time, his voice calm but firm. Richard, I understand your concerns. I appreciate you raising them. But you're thinking quarterly returns when we're building something for the long term. With respect, Jonah, we have investors to answer to, shareholders who expect growth. We can't just spend millions on programs that don't generate direct revenue. Yes, we can, because I'm the majority shareholder, and I'm telling you this is what we're doing. Jonah's tone didn't rise, but the steel underneath was unmistakable. Read Labs isn't a company that exists to maximize quarterly profits. It's a company that exists to democratize design. If those two goals conflict, I choose the mission every time. The room went silent. Richard opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Jonah, I have a fiduciary duty, and I have a moral duty. To the people we serve, to the community we've built, to the promise we made when we started this company. Jonah stood up, his hands flat on the table. I know you're concerned about sustainability. So am I. But the answer isn't to gut the programs that define who we are. The answer is to find additional revenue streams that support them. Like what? Richard asked, but he sounded more curious now than combative. Arya jumped in. We could introduce an optional pay-it-forward option for premium users. Let them add a small monthly donation that goes directly to the scholarship fund. We could create corporate sponsorship opportunities where companies fund specific scholarships in exchange for talent pipeline access. We could develop premium resources, advanced tutorials, exclusive content, where proceeds support the accessibility programs. She was talking faster now, ideas flowing as quickly as she could articulate them. We could partner with design agencies who need junior talent, creating a placement program that generates revenue while helping our scholarship recipients find jobs. We could license our mentorship model to other platforms, creating a new business line. We could stop. Richard held up a hand, but he was smiling slightly. Okay, I hear you. These are good ideas. Not all of them will work, but some of them might. So what are you saying? Arya asked. I'm saying, let's table the budget cuts for now. Give me 2 weeks to work with you on revenue diversification strategies. If we can find ways to make these programs more self-sustaining, I'm willing to support them. He looked at Jonah. But I still think we need more financial discipline around how we're spending, clear metrics, regular reviews, accountability for outcomes. Agreed, Jonah said. Arya, you okay with that? Arya nodded, relief flooding through her. Absolutely. I want these programs to be sustainable. I don't want them to be something we have to cut when times get tough. The meeting broke up, people filtering out with various expressions of relief or thoughtfulness. Sarah squeezed Arya's shoulder as she passed. Nice work defending your vision. When the room had cleared except for Jonah and Arya, he turned to her with a tired smile. That was close, he said. Too close. Jonah, I didn't realize how much we were spending. I should have been more careful with the budget. I should have... Stop. You were doing exactly what I asked you to do, building programs that actually help people. Richard's concerns are valid, but so is what we're doing. We just need to find the balance. What if we can't? What if it comes down to a choice between being profitable and being good? Jonah was quiet for a moment. Then we figure out how to be both. But Arya, I want you to understand something. When I started this company, I promised myself I'd never become the kind of CEO who prioritizes money over mission. I've seen too many companies lose their soul chasing quarterly returns. That's not happening here. Not as long as I'm in charge. Even if it costs you. Especially if it costs me. What's the point of being successful if you've compromised everything that made success meaningful? He picked up his laptop. Come on. Let's grab coffee and start brainstorming those revenue ideas. If we're going to prove Richard wrong, we need a solid plan. They spent the next 2 weeks working like they were building the company from scratch again. Arya brought Marcus and Jasmine into the planning sessions. Richard joined, surprisingly helpful, once he understood they were taking his concerns seriously. They modeled different scenarios, ran projections, tested assumptions. The pay-it-forward donation option launched first. Within a week, 23% of premium users had opted in, generating an additional $14,000 in monthly revenue earmarked specifically for scholarships. It wasn't huge, but it was a start, and it proved that users wanted to be part of the mission. The corporate sponsorship program took longer to develop, but by the end of the month, they had 3 companies signed on. Tech firms who wanted access to the talent Reed Labs was cultivating, who saw the value in supporting designers from diverse backgrounds. Each sponsorship funded 10 full scholarships, and in return, the companies got early access to hire from the scholarship pool. It's not charity, Arya explained to a potential sponsor. It's enlightened self-interest. You're building relationships with talented designers before your competitors even know they exist. You're diversifying your talent pipeline, and you're investing in the future of the industry. The model worked. By month 2, they had 7 corporate sponsors. By month 3, they had a waiting list. The mentorship program expanded organically, successful mentees becoming mentors themselves, creating a virtuous cycle of knowledge transfer and community building. The hardship fund remained grant-based. Arya had fought hard on this, refusing to turn emergency assistance into something transactional, but they'd tightened the application process based on Richard's feedback, ensuring money went where it was needed most. 4 months after that tense meeting in the conference room, Richard sent a new email. This one had a different tone. The CAI programs are now generating 41% of their operating costs through diversified revenue streams. User growth attributable to CAI initiatives has contributed an estimated $2.1 million in new revenue this quarter. Brand sentiment is at an all-time high. ROI, when properly measured, is significantly positive. I recommend continuing current funding levels, and am happy to support modest expansion in Q3. Arya printed that email and put it on her wall, right next to Emma Chen's thank you note. Saturday morning, 6 months after her first day at Reed Labs, Arya walked into the Brew and Bean Café carrying a small package wrapped in brown paper. The cafe was crowded, just like it had been that Monday morning that changed everything. But this time, Arya walked in confident, purposeful, knowing exactly where she was going. Jonah was already there, sitting at the same table where they'd first met. Theo was with him, working on homework with intense concentration. When they saw her, both of them smiled. Right on time, Jonah said, gesturing to the empty chair. Coffee's on its way. Arya sat down, setting the package on the table. I wanted to give you something, both of you actually. You didn't have to, Jonah started. I know, I wanted to. She pushed the package toward Theo. Open it. Theo tore into the wrapping with the enthusiasm of a 7-year-old on Christmas morning. Inside was a book, a custom-made picture book with illustrations Arya had created herself. The title read, The Boy Who Made Friends at Coffee Shops. Theo opened it, his eyes going wide. The story was simple but true. A boy and his dad who went to cafes to meet interesting people. The boy's superpower was seeing people for who they really were, not what they looked like. The illustrations showed different people they'd met, including one of a tired woman with a laptop who became their friend. That's you, Theo said, pointing to the illustration. And that's me and Dad. It is, Arya confirmed. I wanted to thank you for being so welcoming when I first started, for making me feel like I belonged. Theo hugged the book to his chest. This is the best present ever. I'm going to read it every night. I'm counting on it, Arya said with a smile. Jonah was staring at the book with an expression that made Arya's chest tight. When he looked up, his eyes were suspiciously bright. Arya, I don't even know what to say. Say you'll keep coming to this cafe every Saturday. Say you'll keep that table where it all started. Deal. He cleared his throat, clearly trying to compose himself. Actually, speaking of this table, I have something too. He pulled out a small brass plaque, the kind that might be mounted on a park bench or a building wall. It read, "Reserved for kind people, in memory of Elena Martinez, who believed in second chances." Arya touched the engraved letters. "Elena? Your investor?" "She passed away 2 weeks ago. Heart attack, completely unexpected. She was only 53. Jonah's voice was rough. "The funeral was yesterday. I didn't tell anyone at work because I didn't want people to make a fuss, but I needed to tell you. She's the reason any of this exists. She took a chance on me when nobody else would." "I'm so sorry, Jonah." "Me too. But I was thinking, she would have loved what you're doing. The accessibility programs, the scholarships, the hardship fund. That was her whole philosophy. Invest in people, not just businesses. Bet on character, not credentials." He tapped the plaque. "I got permission from the cafe owner to mount this here, at this table, so other people can see it. So maybe someone else will offer their seat to a stranger who needs it." Theo, who'd been listening quietly, spoke up. "Miss Elena was nice. She always gave me chocolate when we visited." "She was the best," Jonah agreed. "And Arya, I think she would have really liked you. I wish I could have met her." "Me too. But in a way, you're carrying on her work. You're doing what she taught me to do, seeing the person, not the resume. Taking chances on people everyone else overlooks. She'd be proud of what we've built." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the cafe bustling around them, 3 people connected by choices made at this very table. Then the barista brought over their coffee. Arya's vanilla latte, Jonah's black coffee, Theo's hot chocolate with extra whipped cream, and they spent the next hour just talking. Not about work or programs or budgets, but about life. About Theo's upcoming birthday party, about Arya's plans to visit her mother next month, about Jonah's realization that maybe, finally, he was ready to start dating again. "Really?" Arya asked. "That's big." "Terrifying, more like. I haven't been on a date in 15 years. I have no idea how to do this anymore." He laughed, but there was vulnerability underneath it. "What if I'm terrible at it? What if I compare everyone to my wife and nobody measures up?" "Then you go on more dates until you meet someone who doesn't need to measure up because they're perfect in a completely different way," Arya said. "You deserve to be happy, Jonah. Theo deserves to see his dad happy. Elena would tell you the same thing." "Dad's already happy," Theo interjected. "He smiles way more now than before." Jonah ruffled his son's hair. "You know what? The kid's right. I am happier. Work's better. Life's better. Having you at Reed Labs has made everything better, Arya. Not just the programs, though those are incredible, but having someone I can trust completely. Someone who pushes back when I need it. Someone who reminds me why any of this matters." "Right back at you," Arya said. 6 months ago, I was applying to jobs that didn't want me, wondering if I'd ever catch a break. Now I'm running programs that are changing lives. That's because you took a chance on me." "No," Jonah corrected gently. "That's because you were kind to a stranger in a crowded cafe. That's because when I asked you what you'd do with money, you said you'd help people. That's because you are exactly who you appeared to be. Someone with talent, integrity, and a genuine desire to make things better." He raised his coffee cup. "To chances taken. To people who see others. To tables shared with strangers who become family." Arya and Theo raised their cups too, and they clinked them together, coffee and hot chocolate and possibilities, in the middle of a cafe that would never know how many lives had been changed by one woman offering her seat. After they finished their drinks, Jonah and Theo walked Arya to her car. Her Honda was still old and temperamental, but she'd grown fond of it. It had carried her through the hard times, and now it got to carry her through the good ones. "We'll see you Monday?" Theo asked, already knowing the answer, but asking anyway. "You'll see me Monday," Arya confirmed, "and every Monday after that." After they left, Arya sat in her car for a moment, not quite ready to drive away. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through the photos from the past 6 months. The scholarship showcase, the mentorship program launch, the wall of success stories that now wrapped around 3 full sides of Jonah's reminder room. Emma Chen's first professional design job, Marcus presenting at a design conference about accessibility, Jasmine teaching a workshop to inner-city teens. All of it had started here, in this parking lot, on a Monday morning when Arya had been desperate and hopeless and convinced the world didn't care about people like her. She'd been wrong. The world did care. It just needed people brave enough to build the bridges, to create the opportunities, to insist that talent mattered more than privilege. Her phone buzzed, a text from her mother. "Just saw an article about your programs in Design Week magazine. My daughter, the changemaker. I'm so proud I could burst." Arya smiled, typing back quickly. "Couldn't have done it without you, Mom. Everything I know about kindness, I learned from watching you." Another text came in, this one from an unknown number. "Ms. Collins, my name is David Martinez. I'm Elena's son. My dad told me about the plaque you're installing at the cafe. Thank you for honoring my mother's memory. She always said the world needed more people like you, people who actually give a damn. I'm glad she was right." Arya sat with that message for a long time, feeling the weight of it, the responsibility and the gift of carrying forward Elena's legacy. Then she started her car and drove home through streets that had stopped feeling hostile and started feeling like possibility. Monday morning arrived with the first real warmth of spring. Arya walked into Reed Labs to find Marcus and Jasmine already at their desks, working on the next phase of the scholarship program. Maya had decorated the office with flowers. Apparently it was the 6-month anniversary of the CAI launch, and someone had decided that deserved celebrating. Sarah called a team meeting at 10. The whole staff crammed into the largest conference room, standing room only. Arya had no idea what this was about. Sarah had been mysteriously vague about the agenda. Jonah stood at the front of the room, looking more relaxed than Arya had ever seen him. He waited until everyone had settled, then began. 6 months ago, we made a bet. We bet that if we focused on our mission, if we put people before profits, if we built programs that actually helped struggling creators, it would make us a better company. Not just morally better, actually better, more successful, more sustainable, more true to what we'd always claimed we wanted to be. He pulled up a slide showing the company metrics. User growth, revenue, retention, engagement, every number was up, some significantly. The bet paid off. We're growing faster than we have in 3 years. We're more profitable. We have better talent, better culture, better relationships with our user base. And it's directly attributable to the work Arya and her team have been doing. Applause filled the room. Arya felt her face flush. "But here's the thing," Jonah continued. "This isn't just about Reed Labs being successful. It's about proving a model, proving that companies can do well by doing good, that you don't have to choose between profits and purpose, that the old way of doing business, extracting maximum value from users while giving back minimum support, is not only wrong, but also bad strategy." He gestured to Arya. "Come up here for a second." Arya walked to the front of the room, her heart pounding, having no idea what was coming. "Arya Collins," Jonah said formally. 6 months ago, you joined this company as our creator community advocate. In that time, you've launched programs that have helped 347 designers through scholarships. You've distributed $187,000 in hardship grants to people facing emergencies. You've facilitated 212 mentor-mentee relationships. You've changed hundreds of lives." He paused, looking directly at her. "More importantly, you've changed this company. You've reminded us who we're supposed to serve. You've pushed back when we were wrong. You've built bridges between our values and our actions. And you've done it all with integrity, compassion, and the kind of authentic leadership that can't be taught." Jonah pulled out an envelope. "Which is why I'm promoting you. Effective immediately, you're our Vice President of Community Impact. You'll continue running the accessibility programs, but you'll also have a seat at the executive table. You'll have input on all major company decisions. You'll have the authority and resources to expand your vision beyond what we've done so far." Arya stared at the envelope, at Jonah, at the room full of people applauding and cheering. Jonah, I've only been here 6 months, and you've accomplished more in 6 months than most people do in 6 years. Take the promotion, Arya. You've earned it." She opened the envelope. Inside was a new employment contract, a new salary that was nearly double what she'd been making, and an increased equity stake in the company. Also a handwritten note from Jonah. "You were right about everything. Thank you for not letting me forget why we built this. Keep pushing us to be better." Arya looked up, her eyes stinging with tears she refused to let fall in front of everyone. "I accept, and I promise I'll keep making you uncomfortable when you need it." Jonah laughed. "I'm counting on it." The meeting broke up, people congratulating Arya as they filtered out. Marcus and Jasmine were beaming. Maya hugged her so hard it hurt. Even Jennifer from marketing came over, shaking Arya's hand with what looked like genuine respect. "You were right about the premium tier pricing," Jennifer said quietly. "I was too focused on short-term revenue. I should have listened sooner. I'm glad Jonah promoted you. We need your voice at the executive level." After everyone had left, Arya stood in the empty conference room, holding the contract, trying to process what had just happened. Vice president, executive team, the ability to shape the company's direction at the highest level. It was everything she'd never dared to dream, handed to her because she'd been kind to a stranger in a cafe. Sarah appeared in the doorway. "How are you holding up?" "Honestly, I'm terrified. What if I mess this up? What if I'm not ready for this kind of responsibility?" "Then you'll learn. You'll adapt. You'll ask for help when you need it." Sarah came to stand beside her. "Arya, the reason Jonah promoted you isn't because you know everything. It's because you're willing to admit what you don't know, because you lead with empathy, because you make decisions based on what's right, not what's easy. Those qualities don't change just because your title does." "I just don't want to let anyone down." "You won't, and even if you stumble sometimes, we'll be here to catch you. That's what teams do." Sarah squeezed her shoulder. "Come on, let's get lunch. You need to celebrate before the reality of the new job kicks in and you realize how much more work this is going to be." They went to a small restaurant near the office, the kind of place where you could actually hear yourself think. Over salads and iced tea, Sarah told Arya stories about her own career trajectory, the mistakes she'd made, the lessons she'd learned. "The hardest part of being a leader," Sarah said, "is realizing you can't save everyone. You'll want to help every person who applies for a scholarship, approve every hardship grant, fix every problem. But you can't. You have to make choices. You have to prioritize. You have to accept that doing a lot of good means you can't do all the good." "How do you live with that?" "By remembering that doing some good is better than doing no good. By celebrating the lives you do change instead of mourning the ones you can't reach. By building systems that outlast you so the work continues even after you're gone." Sarah leaned forward. "Arya, you're going to do amazing things in this new role, but you're also going to face hard decisions. Budget constraints, impossible choices, criticism from people who think you're not doing enough or doing too much. Are you ready for that?" "I have to be," Arya said, "because if I don't do this, who will? If I let the hard parts scare me away, what happens to all the people counting on these programs?" "Exactly, you get it." Sarah sat back. "That's why you're perfect for this job." That evening, Arya drove to her mother's house for the first time in months. She'd been sending money regularly, paying down the medical debt bit by bit over Catherine's protests, but she hadn't visited in person. Work had consumed her. The programs had demanded every spare moment. But tonight felt important. Tonight, she needed to share this with the person who'd taught her what kindness looked like. Catherine opened the door with a gasp of delight, pulling Arya into a hug that smelled like lavender and home. "Baby girl, why didn't you tell me you were coming? I would have made dinner." "I wanted to surprise you, and I have news." They sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Arya had done homework as a kid, where she'd learned to draw while her mother worked double shifts. Arya told her everything, about the promotion, about the expanded budget, about the hundreds of lives they'd changed. "I'm so proud of you," Catherine said, tears streaming down her face. "My baby, a vice president, making the world better, doing exactly what I always knew you would do." "Mom, I need to tell you something else." Arya pulled out her phone, opening her banking app. "I've been paying off your medical debt. Not all of it. I can't afford that yet. But I've paid down $23,000 so far. With the raise, I can pay more. We're going to get you out from under this." Catherine's hand flew to her mouth. "Arya, no. That's your money. You need to save it, invest it, build your own life. I am building my own life. And part of that life includes making sure you don't have to work yourself into the ground, paying for a stroke you didn't ask for." Arya took her mother's hands. Let me do this, Mom. Let me help the person who helped me every single day of my childhood. They cried together, holding hands across the kitchen table. Two women who'd fought through poverty and illness and disappointment to find themselves on the other side of something that looked like triumph. Your father would be so proud, Catherine whispered. Arya's father had died when she was 12, a construction accident that had left them barely scraping by. He always said you were going to change the world. I'm not changing the world, Mom. I'm just trying to help a few people in it. That's how worlds get changed, honey. One person at a time. Arya stayed for dinner, helping her mother cook pasta and talking about everything and nothing, about Theo and his dinosaur obsession, about Jonah and his journey as a single parent, about the cafe where it all started, about Elena Martinez and her belief in second chances. I wish I could meet this Jonah person, Catherine said as they did dishes together. He sounds special. He is. He's also still grieving his wife, still figuring out how to be both a father and a CEO, still learning that it's okay to need help sometimes. Sounds like someone else I know, Catherine said with a knowing smile. I'm getting better at that. Asking for help, I mean. Good, because you can't do everything alone, no matter how much you want to. Driving home that night, Arya felt the full weight of the past 6 months settle over her. She'd gone from desperate and overlooked to successful and respected. She'd built programs that mattered. She'd found a place where her voice carried weight. She'd proven that kindness wasn't weakness, that leading with empathy wasn't naive, that fighting for people who'd been forgotten wasn't foolish. But more than any of that, she'd found family. Not blood family, but chosen family. Jonah and Theo, Marcus and Jasmine, Sarah and Maya, even Jennifer, in her own complicated way. People who believed in the same things she believed in. People who wanted to build something that mattered. The next Saturday, Arya arrived at the Brew and Bean Café to find a small crowd gathered outside. Someone had mounted Elena's plaque on the wall next to the door, and people were stopping to read it, to take photos, to talk about what it meant. Inside, Jonah and Theo had already claimed their table, but this time they weren't alone. Sarah was there with her wife. Marcus and Jasmine had come with their partners. Maya had brought her boyfriend. Even Richard the CFO had shown up, looking slightly uncomfortable in jeans and a casual shirt. What's all this? Arya asked as she approached. 6-month anniversary celebration, Jonah explained. I figured we should mark the occasion of when everything changed. When you proved that one act of kindness could ripple out and touch hundreds of lives. Thousands, Marcus corrected. Don't sell yourself short, boss. They ordered food and coffee and gathered around multiple tables, pushed together, this ragtag family bound by mission and purpose. They told stories about the scholarship recipients who'd gone on to get jobs at major companies, about the hardship grants that had prevented evictions and bankruptcies, about the mentorship relationships that had turned into friendships and collaborations. Theo, who'd been listening intently, suddenly spoke up. Miss Arya, can I ask you a question? Always. Dad told me you didn't know he was rich when you let him sit with you, that you were just being nice. Is that true? It's true. Why were you nice when everyone else wasn't? Arya thought about how to explain it to a 7-year-old. Because your dad looked tired, and I remembered what it felt like to be tired and have nobody care, so I cared. That's a good reason, Theo decided. Then, with the blunt wisdom of children, he added, I think more people should do that. Me too, buddy, Jonah said quietly. Me too. As the afternoon wore on, people started to leave for their own Saturday plans. But Arya stayed, sitting at the original table with Jonah and Theo, watching the cafe around them. New people coming in, taking seats, living their lives. Some of them probably struggling just like she had been. Some of them probably one act of kindness away from something that could change everything. I've been thinking, Jonah said, breaking the comfortable silence, about expanding the model. Not just Reed Labs, but other companies. What if we documented everything we've done? The programs, the revenue models, the metrics, and made it available to other tech companies? Showed them how to build accessibility initiatives that actually work? You want to give away our competitive advantage? Arya asked, but she was smiling because she already knew the answer. I want to scale the impact. If every major platform did even half of what we're doing, imagine how many lives could change. Imagine how different the industry could be. I love it, Arya said. Let's do it. They shook on it, right there at the table that had started everything, sealing another agreement that would ripple out in ways they couldn't fully predict. When it was time to leave, Arya walked out into the late afternoon sunshine feeling complete in a way she'd never felt before. She had work that mattered, people who believed in her, a future that looked bright instead of bleak, and the knowledge that none of it had happened because she was special or chosen or destined for greatness. It had happened because she'd been kind, because when everyone else had protected their space, she'd shared hers, because when a tired stranger had needed a seat, she'd offered one without hesitation or judgment. One small choice, one moment of basic human decency. And everything had changed. Arya got in her Honda, started the engine on the third try, and drove away from the cafe that would forever be sacred ground in her personal history. As she merged into traffic, her phone buzzed with a text from Emma Chen, the scholarship recipient who'd thanked her at the showcase. Just got hired as a junior designer at a major agency. Starting salary is $62,000. I can pay my rent without fear. I can help my parents. I can breathe. Thank you for giving me back my future. I won't forget what you did, and someday I'll pay it forward. Arya pulled over to read the message properly, tears blurring her vision. This was why. This was the point of all of it, not the title or the salary or the success, but this, knowing that somewhere out there, a talented person who'd been overlooked was finally getting their shot. That someone's life was better because programs existed to help them. That the system was slowly, incrementally becoming less broken. She typed back, "Congratulations, Emma. You earned every bit of this. Now go be brilliant and help the next person who needs it." Then she sat in her parked car, watching the city move around her, and let herself feel the full magnitude of what they'd built. It wasn't perfect. It would never be perfect. There would always be more people to help, more barriers to remove, more work to do. But it was real. It was substantial. It was proof that things could change, that the world could be kinder, that success and compassion weren't mutually exclusive. Somewhere in this city, right now, someone was sitting in a cafe with a dying laptop and a dream that felt impossible. Someone was choosing between their rent and their software subscription. Someone was one bad break away from giving up entirely. And because of what Arya had built, because of the program she'd created, because of the choice she'd made to be kind when she had nothing to gain from it, some of those people would get help. Some of those dreams would survive. Some of those talents would get the chance they deserved. Not all of them. She couldn't save everyone, but enough. She could save enough to matter. Arya started her car again and drove home through a city that suddenly felt less like a battlefield and more like a community. A place where kindness could still change lives, where one person offering a seat at a crowded table could set in motion a cascade of transformation that touched hundreds, then thousands, then more. She thought about Elena Martinez, who'd taken a chance on a young entrepreneur when nobody else would. About Jonah Reed, who'd disguised himself as a stranger to find out if kindness still existed. About Theo, who believed the best in everyone he met. About her mother, who taught her that helping others wasn't weakness but strength. And she thought about the woman she'd been 6 months ago, desperate, overlooked, convinced the world didn't care about people like her. That woman would never have believed what came next, would never have imagined that one simple act of generosity could become the foundation of a career, a mission, a purpose. But it had. And now Arya Collins, Vice President of Community Impact at Reed Labs, had the resources and the platform to make sure other people got their chances too. To build a world where talent mattered more than privilege, where kindness was rewarded instead of exploited, where the cafe table with the brass plaque reading "Reserved for Kind People" wasn't just a memorial, but a promise. A promise that someone was looking. Someone cared. Someone would see you, even when everyone else looked away. The sun was setting as Arya finally arrived home, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. She walked into her small apartment, the same apartment she'd lived in when she was struggling, though now it felt like a choice rather than a trap, and opened her laptop one more time. She had work to do, programs to expand, lives to change, a world to make slightly better, one person at a time. But first, she opened a new document and started to write. Note to self. Never forget what it felt like to be desperate. Never forget what it meant when someone showed you kindness. Never forget that the most powerful thing you can do is see people, really see them, and offer help when they need it most. Because sometimes the smallest gesture, one shared table, one genuine smile, one moment of basic human decency, becomes the doorway to everything you were meant to be. She saved the document and closed her laptop, ready to rest before Monday came and the work began again. Ready to keep building, keep helping, keep proving that kindness wasn't naive, but revolutionary. Because in a world that often felt harsh and unforgiving, in an industry that too often valued credentials over character, in a society that made it easy to look away from people who were struggling, Aria Collins had learned the most important lesson of all. The smallest act of kindness can change everything. And at that crowded cafe table, two strangers and a little boy hadn't just become something like a family. They'd become proof that the world could still be good, that people could still surprise you, that sometimes when you offer your seat to someone who needs it, you don't just change their life, you change your own. You,